Welcome back to the home studio. Welcome to episode 31 of the Stevie Richards Show. This is part two where we answer your questions and comments from a recent community post. James had told me we got well over 700 comments and questions on that community post. So who knows? We might have to have a part three or part four down the line. Man, Philly accent, part P-A-R-T, not P-O-R-T. My goodness. Time to pass it along to my co-host, James Romero, who's definitely still lighting up YouTube with his incredibly famous YouTube channel, also named James Romero.
Yeah, I'm pretty much just the angriest person on YouTube. Well, maybe not actually. I can be way angrier. I actually did a couple of versions of videos where I showed them to my wife, and she went, "You cannot post that." So I was like, "Okay, I've had to just rewrite everything and then refilm it."
So this is the friendly version, James, on these recent videos. There's a much more angry version that comes out.
Yeah, this is now the exhausted version of me at the moment because, man, it's just tiring. It's tiring. I'm trying to launch a fourth YouTube channel fifth. I'm sorry, if you include other things as well. But yes, it's more 800 questions now. We actually got another 100 questions before in the interim week.
I didn't know that. Okay, so I guess we are going to have more than two parts. We're trying to answer each and every question for everybody out there. Just remind everybody, Stu, we talked about Patreon before. We usually talk about at the end of the show. We actually did a watch along on the double dog collar match, which was Stu, and a lot of people had requested that. Most people after we did the watch along on Patreon. So that is up there. Wishing we could bring most of the content to YouTube, but for obvious reasons, if you followed the wrestling analysis channel, that's not really possible with a lot of content ID, copyright claims, copyright strikes, stuff like that. But we do definitely give you anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes of watch along each and every week.
And what do we watch that'll be out this Monday?
Probably something that'll get people mad. Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, the cage match from AEW Revolution. And I wanted to say this, I said it during the watch along. Will Ospreay did an interview with Chris Van Vliet, I believe, where Bubba Ray Dudley had said that what he does not pay the bills. I commend Will for saying that he paid his dad's house off and got his mom a new kitchen. That is definitely an awesome story and sticks out to me. He's a babyface. They should feature something like that a little bit more of how these guys and girls conduct their family life. Not the heels. We need a little mystique on them. Hate when heels go, by the way, I'm not really a bad guy, literally on social media.
Do you know who does that? The Rock.
He does it mid-promo live.
he does it mid-promo, but I don't know which time he did it, but it was recent. Maybe it was last year with the Cody thing. And then they did whatever it was on TV. This was the time when he was smearing Cody's blood on a weight belt or whatever. Or was that the most? Anyway, smearing his blood wherever in the lead up to WrestleMania. And then after the cameras went off, I think on one of the live shows, he went, by the way, this is just me playing an act. I'm really not a bad guy,
Of course. Right before WrestleMania, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sounds great. Sounds awesome.
Why is it so few people in wrestling who are the heel really don't want to be booed? They won't go all the way. I mean, the last 20 years, there's only been a few like Edge or Chris Jericho. But for the most part, people who play the bad guy want to be liked.
I don't know. I think if you use Edge and especially Jericho as examples, they know. And the number one thing that makes babyfaces, and we talked about with Cena, when a babyface turns heel, at least in the old model, the way things used to work, you would take a big hit in your merchandise money. That's part of the Right to Censor episode. Godfather becoming Goodfather cost him a lot of opportunities that a babyface are afforded, but the heels are not. Jericho and Edge can still be to a point of being heels, but make you want to buy their action figures, their merchandise, or anything that they have around because they have cool catchphrases, cool looks, logos, stuff like that. So they managed that little sweet spot. But in most cases, I think today, it might also have to do a lot with just sensitivity. I don't know if you draw any less money as far as multiple streams of income being a heel nowadays, because mostly everybody, especially after that girl did the AEW interview, everybody's clued in. So if for any stunt grannies or anybody in Arkansas or Alabama that still believed, she took care of that.
Oh, man. That's coming up later, by the way. I've got a story for you before we do the intros and everything else, right? So, but I may have told you this before, so stop me if I have. Back in like 2006 or something like that, WWE had like an online fantasy. It's like fantasy football, but it was fantasy WWE, right? And you got points for, you know how it works. You get like a certain amount of money, and then every wrestler's worth a certain amount. And you got points for people winning. You got points for people how they won by submission or count or whatever. But also, you would get points for if said person used a weapon. And also, you get points if they appeared on Raw, and if they didn't appear on Raw, they'd get points for appearing on like Heat or something like that. I picked you on my team, and tens of thousands of people played this every week, and I loved it. And you were the one who actually won me. I got into the top 10 one week, and everyone who got into the top 10 won a T-shirt. And I actually changed my name because there was no way. You just beat someone up with a chair, I think, on Velocity, so you end up getting like 30-odd points. Like, you were like the winner of the entire week.
I think it was when I hit Spike with the chair on Heat before having a... Yeah, I didn't use the chair too much except on Heat.
Yeah, it may well have been around then. I know it was 2006 because I changed my username to Rated R T-shirt, please, because that's what T-shirt I wanted. Well, I didn't realise that WWE was going to send you what you were going to get regardless, and they sent me a XL. I was not XL at the time, or even now. T-shirt that was the Vince loves and then a rooster.
Oh my God, the clearance gimmick.
Yeah. So they gave me the clearance gimmick Vince loves cocks T-shirt.
So you went from hating me in Right to Censor to liking me in this particular, game that you were playing, to back to hating me because you got a crappy T-shirt that you didn't want.
Yeah, I decided they gave you no option on size or design. You were getting whatever they had left.
I'm telling you though, the fact that I had anything to do with helping you win that game leads me to really apply leverage now for you to help me with my third YouTube channel. How's that? We can have 8 YouTube channels between us.
You know.
No, because you're too busy having 2 books, one for The Rock, one for Owen Hart, and also your James Romero channel. Still WSI, Storytime with Dutch, and of course, please subscribe here to the Stevie Richards Show. There are the plugs.
Oh, well, there's 2 more things. Stevie Richards has a Cameo that is blowing up the Cameo website.
And making all the talent mad as hell at me.
Oh, what, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Go on. I don't know the story.
Just like our 4K cameras and our proper audio and everything. It's yeah. They were like, my God, you're making everybody look bad with your 4, 5, 6-minute cameos. But I mean it. I like having, if you're going to pay this kind of money in this economy, money's tight for everybody. I want to really give you the most amount of info. I'm not buying time. I'm actually trying to, if somebody asked a question about certain things, like even a guy talking about his kid making a dean's list at a university, I researched the university a little bit, and I was talking about the programs. They didn't say what he was majoring in, but I like to personalize them as much as possible. Cameo is a personal video fulfillment request system, so why not make it as good as you can make it?
The person who their cameos get like the most play on YouTube, because you can do whatever you want with the videos, and like Bret Hart's is always the funniest because he would just crap on anyone you want, like whatever, how much he wants. Can you talk about Goldberg, or can you talk about so and so? And he'll always be, he sucked, and I'll tell you why. So it's really funny the way he does it. It's not like Ric Flair who'll just go woo and fall over and that's $700, please. Stevie actually gives you value for your money, for goodness sake. But speaking of value for money, the biggest thing that we like to mention, and the stuff that collectively we put the most effort in, apart from this show here, is the Patreon. So, what can people expect on Patreon this Monday just gone, and the Monday coming up?
Well, Monday, we have the double dog collar match this past Monday as we're recording this episode. Next Monday is going to be Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, the cage match from AEW Revolution. We're able to play the video and the audio in full without having to cut back and forth like we do here on YouTube. Also this morning, I showed how I was preparing for episode 37 in the current setup, which will probably change by episode 38. The show notes, other premium content, and I have some other production stuff I'm going to be working on. Basically, we take you behind the scenes all week, even some production meetings between you and myself, all 3 of us, meaning you, myself, and Chris, or just me and Chris. It's a good peek into how much work really goes into this, and we truly do enjoy it.
We do, but it doesn't mean it's not exhausting as well. But it is. It's just I was moaning to you beforehand. Man, this is exhausting. And I'm not saying this show in particular. This is actually, for the amount of work we put in, this is a lot easier than some other stuff I'm doing at the moment. But
let me ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Besides asking you to help you run the third channel, which do you prefer? You've interviewed and worked with different talent. You worked with a whole spectrum of people. I don't mean that as a pun. Maybe a little bit at the spectrum, but which do you prefer? Do you prefer the guys who just show up and it's hands off, they get on camera, and then you're left to your own devices, or the OCD 24/7 texting you at 4 a.m. while I'm doing cardio? I found this. How about this? Why don't we do this?
Yeah, but that's 9 a.m. for me. It's just fine. It wakes me up. It's good.
The clip's not. It's 2:15. The clip's not out yet. What's going on?
You did text me that, right? Okay, so just for everybody, we'll get into the show in a second, right? So Stevie was like, it was 15 minutes after a clip normally goes out, and he's like, where was it? And I said, well, what are you talking about? It's up in 45 minutes. So this is what we found out, and I actually found out last year and then forgot, was that America and the UK both have daylight savings times on different weeks. So I was wondering why Dutch was super early on Monday, and then I was wondering why you were complaining about like a clip not coming out at the right time. I was like, dude, it's 45 minutes, but it should have come out 15 minutes ago, because for 2 weeks of the year or 3 weeks of the year, there's only 4 hours difference between us instead of 5. The things you learn.
Well, the thing is, too, that I have a lot of channels I watch, and like basically there's a real estate kid that really, he goes up every day but Tuesday, and it's at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And if it's like 5:36, 5:40, my wife and I are like, well, what's going on? Is there going to be a video? Creatures of habit, routine. People know 2 p.m. for the clips, 2 p.m. on Friday for the full episode. Sometimes we'll get a couple in a day if it's really like big news or something, but people are expecting it, man. I'll get emails. I got an email on that one at like 2:10. Hey, man, just want to let you know the clip's not up yet today.
Damn.
So thank you. That's awesome. When they're like waiting for it, it's great.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it never ever comes up until it happens. You know what I mean? It's like, why would anyone ever think about that? Is because, you know, our daylight savings time is tied with the summer solstice, whenever it turns into spring, basically. It's like the first Sunday after spring, whereas yours is like towards the beginning of March. Anyway, that being said, Patreon, the Stevie Richard Show Patreon, and the links are in the description. I encourage you all to go there, because a lot of people were asking for the double dog collar match as I was going through the community post, the YouTube community post. Quite a lot of people very specifically wanted to watch along with that. So there you go. It's already happened, and it's right there for you. And once again, Stevie said, we would have put it on YouTube if we could. You just can't do it. It's a full... You can't skip back and forth.
I've proven that.
Oh, goodness me. Anyway.
Forget about AEW putting that on YouTube.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I know. Don Stevens pouring at the ground to launch a complaint. I know. Okay, then. So, once again, the YouTube community post a couple of weeks ago, I wrote on it and said, listen, we're going to do a fan question episode. Do you have a question for Stevie? And over the last couple of weeks, we've got over 800 submissions, which is more than we could ever sort of deal with realistically in one episode or even two. So we thought we'd go back to it. I picked out some more of the best questions, I thought. And I've also saved a lot of questions for future episodes, take a drink, that relate to something very specific that we're going to be covering in a future topic, like backstage stuff about WWE that you wouldn't know, or something very specifically about wrestling figures, or something very specific about something that you and Raven did or something. Those questions will be addressed eventually in future episodes when we've got like a more firm topic. But for now, let's get on to the fan questions that are a bit more I was going to say out there, but, you know, that don't fit into any particular category.
I think they're more nuanced and personal this time than there's mixed in with wrestling, but it has a lot more to do with it's some stuff we've opened up with in past episodes that have made our show different than others.
And the first one is Caitlin from Sydney, Australia. Your openness to showing the vulnerable sides of your career has been such a treat to watch, especially as you have spoken about your afterlife from wrestling. I read them how they're written. What are things that you wish you could tell your younger self to help focus on what it comes to the physical, mental, and psychological well-being of yourself on the road or even in the ring? So this is almost mistakes I've made a few. What would you change, I guess?
Well, there's people that always say that they have no regrets. Obviously, I have regrets about the way I handled certain things, probably most famously the way I left ECW and not putting people over on the way out, not doing good business, whatever circumstances surrounding that. You can make an excuse for that, but I don't choose to do that right now. I don't think I would ever go back and tell my younger self to avoid certain pitfalls, to avoid certain mistakes, to not do this, or, when I didn't do it, to actually do this to change that history. I don't think that would be it. But what I would say is, if I could go back and tell my younger self a lot of things, is you're kind of on the right path. Stick to what you know. Don't beat yourself up and make, like, there were certain situations where I'm an outlier. I don't belong. I've said that in the Right to Censor episode. I do not belong with these people. I do not fit in. I know it. They especially know it, or let me know, so in case I don't know it. But the fact that after wrestling, all the things that I thought were much harder to accomplish, or the path least taken, usually during any entertainment or sports career, I would still do that, but tell myself to hang in there, be more mentally tough, be more psychologically tough, be more emotionally tough about it, and know that you're going to come out the other end. Nobody knows during the course of what's going on that, man, thank God that happened. I'm glad it happened the way it did. It turned out to be even better because I learned this lesson. That would be what I would do. I wouldn't say, go back to the past and let myself know, "Hey, you gotta bet on the Super Bowl. The Eagles are gonna beat the the Chiefs this year." I'm not gonna have the sports almanac to pass along to my younger self. But, no, I have regrets, but I'm so afraid to say I would change things because what I am today, the work ethic, how much I'm enjoying life at 53 with the perspective of all the mistakes behind me and try not to duplicate those or replicate them, that's where it is. Also, things not coming so easy at all in anything I've ever done in my life, not just wrestling, have allowed me to stay accountable to making this production, this show, the organization of it, our chemistry, the work of everything a lot more enjoyable. That's a lot of former wrestlers. The point of wrestling is to do as little as possible and make the most amount of money. That's a great way to be when you're in it, but it sometimes doesn't instill work ethic, and it instills a lot of entitlement post full-time career. I never had that, how should I say, that crutch. I never had that lazy thing to kind of lean on. I've always had to work 10 times harder because wrestling didn't come naturally. This stuff didn't come naturally. I'm very introverted. So speaking in front of the camera, I'm still nervous every time. So long-winded answer for that. But I would just tell myself back then, hang in there, be tough, push forward, maybe get in a little better shape from time to time. Don't put on 62 or 70 pounds. But that lesson was also something that caused me to be obsessive about not getting back to that. So I learned the life lesson, and that's what I would probably tell myself. I don't want any butterfly effects in wrestling or my personal life, so I wouldn't change anything.
When you look back on yourself, obviously, you can give yourself advice like buy Bitcoin and that kind of thing, but would you tell people, would you tell yourself be more confident?
I don't know. I really don't know, because confidence could always be construed as arrogance. There's a lot in wrestling. If you come in confident and you're like, I want to do great work and I know I can contribute, what's the number one thing in the locker room or anybody else? Who's this guy think he is? It's a very, very jealous, spot protecting, even if you have no spot to protect, business. There's guys that, and that's the weird part. The guys that have nothing to worry about their spot sometimes would be the ones that would have it out for you to keep you from even getting sniffing anywhere close to where they are. So being confident. Now I had a confidence in my work. I had a confidence in the art. I had a confidence when I left the building and went home. But when I was there, it really was walking on eggshells 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I said this during the Right to Censor, I believe, episode, where I said, I've never, even on the indies afterwards, TNA, ROH, I've never ever felt comfortable in any locker room. But that's just the nature of the business, I think. And for me, that was always if I'm not comfortable, I'm always trying harder to get comfortable, but I never got there.
As far as like career things that you might have a do-over, because you've said, you gave an example there, and it's probably your most famous example, that you didn't return to ECW and you signed with WCW, and I think, for the reasons you gave, most people would do what you did. Are there any other things in your career that, even if there were small things, think, man, I wish I'd done this? Because it's, forget about the butterfly effect, but let's say you had basically the same tenure in every company. But an example I can remember you giving recently was Vince McMahon, the meeting where you said that you went on a bit too long and you think you sort of turned the tide of Vince's opinion on you. There are other ones that, I don't know, maybe a move that you did that resulted in an injury that you thought sort of you were unsure to do and you ended up doing it and wish you hadn't. Things on those lines.
Yeah, I mean, there's always stuff you can say. I wish I never had that meeting with Vince, and would it have turned out any different? But that was the only opportunity. And if people don't remember, during a talent meeting, he showed a match between myself and Bob Holly and told everybody, this is exactly what we want, the storytelling. Look at Stevie, look at Bob, look at what they're doing. And this is what I want. And I said, and then a few minutes later, I'm getting squashed by Mr. Kennedy in 3 minutes. And I said, if I'm going to stand up for myself based on that meeting and this, I just wanted to go in there and just have some clarification. And the clarification was, see you in 4 months. So that was it. But I'm not sorry I had that meeting. I am kind of sorry sometimes that the number one thing would be, but it also really does, the injuries and everything serve my fitness channel, my fitness business, because I have injuries to work around, which is relatable to a lot of people. But, if I can go back in a perfect world, I would say no to the guardrail, which would probably give me heat in the ECW and have a whole nother line of problems. And I would have not wrestled Heidenreich. He would have been, I think there's a question about if you would have refused to do something, and we can get, it might be even next, that I would have refused to work Heidenreich with him being so green. And there would probably been a lot of other people that I would have been like, no, I'm not your crash test dummy, which probably would have put me out of a job. You see how there would have been consequences, but I would have stood up for myself in certain ways. The other thing, I probably the number one above the ECW one, I would have told Vince to go F himself, like Cody told The Rock, if he wanted me to wear the dress. I would have totally been like, no, not doing that. And then went to TNA.
Future episode as well.
Because for some reason, my career survived after that. And I had, for the grace of God or whatever, it shouldn't have. That should have been the death knell for anything Stevie Richards related. I don't know how or why it happened, because anybody else that was put in that position would have been embarrassed to a degree that they wouldn't. And I wasn't seen after that for a while. So you know what I mean? It almost looked like I was gone from the company after that match.
You could have got a Playgirl spread like Vito did, like a couple of years afterwards, if you stuck with it for a while. Just one more follow-up on this. Is there anyone you wish you got to know better in your career that you thought, God, he was a cool guy and, I could have made more of an overture and hung out with him more, kind of thing?
Probably people that I talked to today. Rene Dupree, I kind of talked to him in the locker room, got to know him post-wrestling career. My buddy now, Big Mike Behrens, I met him a couple of times. People you kind of like go throughout the indies or even TV tapings and stuff like that. I was always pretty friendly with the indie guys that I wasn't familiar with. But if you're talking about full-time roster people, I don't know, man, because it's that familiarity breeds contempt too. Like I didn't want them knowing too much about me, especially if they were in a position of power. Mainly if I had debt, like a home, a car, stuff like that, because then they know they got you. If you have to make a house payment, a car payment, both, stuff like that. There's certain people, okay, I'll put it this way. Dutch. People like Dutch, Cornette, and other people that I really never had sat down with at the learning tree to really, I probably would have become so much better of a worker quicker if I opened myself up to, hey, I'll drive you to the next town, Dutch. I'll drive you here or do whatever, because that's where you learn everything. And during the later part of your career, you just kind of want to be left alone. You don't want to travel with anybody. And I was one of those people, but I should have made myself available to learn and still improve later on in my career. So it'd probably be one thing. on that basis. And from that, I probably would have became friends with certain guys and had more in common than I realized, but we both had those walls up in the locker room.
Next question. Angle of Time says, Hey, Stevie, been a fan of wrestling since I was a child in 2001 and hated the right to censor with yourself and Ivory the most. Now, as an adult, I can't stop praising the work and effort you put into making that stable believable and playing a heel character so well. I think around that time, Chris Jericho was a popular face in the IC title picture. Why didn't WWE capitalise and give you at least an Intercontinental title run? You more than deserved it. And there is a follow-up question here that's very thematically similar. From Ismail's Ali, I think. Bit of a crappy question, but why didn't you get an extended run in the upper mid-card in WWE or WCW? Had the look, you were better work than at least 80% of the roster, had a fantastic promo. Why didn't we get IC or US champ Stevie Richards?
Well, thank you very much for the compliment, both of you, for saying that I deserved a little bit more of an opportunity that I was given. That's really all I wanted ever in wrestling, was an opportunity, because when you make the most out of the opportunity, you succeed, then money will follow. Merchandise will follow, opportunity, more opportunities, and they're tests, but they're opportunities in that test. Why I was never IC champion, I was told this by Pat Patterson once, and a couple other people had echoed it. And you're going to laugh in 2025. Do you want to hear why I never won the IC belt?
You're too small.
I was too small.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
I was too small. I'm too small to be IC champ. And this was still on the tail end of Rocky, Shamrock, Austin, Owen Hart. Like, I'm after them, but there was still that stigma of the size. And the IC title also represented, like, it was still in that era, I believe, that when you won the IC title, that was a test and an opportunity to see if you can go further up and maybe possibly carry the world title one day. That's the schematic for that. You know, you had your European championship, other championships that were underneath that. But if you carry certain championships and you have a good run and people want to see you, they love you, they hate you, they buy your merchandise, they come out to see your butt kick, get your butt kicked, whatever it might be, they see that as, oh, we can push him even further. And I saw it that way. And if I had an IC title run or a US title run, as a businessman, it's great because I'm running right back to the photo set, take the picture with the belt, print out a bunch, and then when they do release me, I go to the conventions with the belt picture. So, and then get a replica too, so you can take a picture with the belt. That is carny, but that's the way you hustle on the indies. Politically, I wasn't aligned. I wasn't a political favorite. I didn't come into the company as somebody. Well, Vince Russo hired me, and so did Terry Taylor. Russo was gone not long after I got there, so I probably had 2 strikes against me in that vein too. But I couldn't tell you. And as time goes on, and we talk about this with AEW, I became an old toy. New toys came in, new shiny toys that they could play with. And also at the same time, I believe my biggest hindrance was the reason I stayed employed for so long with so many companies. I could bump, sell, put people over, and I wasn't selfish. And the last one is the thing that Vince McMahon had a real problem with and told me right to my face, you're not enough of an asshole. That's my biggest problem with you. So I think you put all that together, and that's why I didn't have ruthless aggression in order to, I mean, but I can have make pretend ruthless aggression in the ring and cut a fake promo saying I hate this person, even though I really don't hate him that much, and make people believe it. So thank you very much. And, you know, the fact that I could cut a promo, the fact that I could work, and the fact that I had some kind of, I guess, aura, energy, poise, and presence to present myself, that I'm not just another enhancement guy, is why I think people still ask that question today. There was just something about my character. They're like, this doesn't make any sense that he just moves laterally the whole time. But that's what it is.
Would you have seen the European title if you were offered that? Would you have seen that as a good thing, or by 2001, 2002, was it just... Eh?
Yeah, because I would have took what D'Lo did, that every single week he was from a different place in Europe, and I would have tried to do something like that. Or I would have came out and one week I would have been dressed like, somebody from, the British Royal Guard, then I would have been dressed as French person, or I would have put some entertainment on it. Um, Whatever title you got, even when I had the hardcore title, the fact that it was just a mishmash of everybody going over, here, there, everywhere, going all over the place, I still created finishes and did things that at least made it stand out to some extent. Even the finish that stands out in my mind that I'm proud of is I didn't want to wrestle Bradshaw in heat. I just wanted to hand the belt over. And he was like, I'll see you out there. So automatically people were like, oh my God. He did something with Crash, I think the week before. So we're wrestling. He's just squashing me, running through me. Crash comes down to interfere. Crash ends up getting hit by Bradshaw with the clothesline, rolls out of the ring. I pin Crash 1, 2, 3 and run off, and Bradshaw is chasing me. So cool little finish where nobody got hurt, where the character got hurt. But that's what I would have brought to the European title. And even if I had the opportunity for the second tier title, the IC or US title, I would have done something, a spin on the open challenge, a spin on what D'Lo did, or a spin on anything I can do to identify that belt with my character.
Aside from any world titles, were there any belts that you really coveted or would love to have said that you won in your career?
I think
taking out money.
No, the Intercontinental title, 100%, because the Intercontinental title to me growing up was the title that had the best matches, the workhorses, the people I identified with to go out there and work hard, the Bret Harts, the Randy Savages. Not that I'm on their level, but I believe what I would bring to that would be that kind of character and intensity. And as a heel, it would be a great way to put baby faces over while still getting myself over even more as champion. Plus the fact the old IC title that Savage had, that that Savage had, that Bret Hart had, that's the best thing, and the Ultimate Warrior too. That is the best looking belt ever. I love the style of the IC belt. Hate the new ones. Hate the new ones.
Oh, what does the new one look like now?
It's like a thing, and it has a center point. It looks like the Star Trek Mirror Universe logo in there. It's not a good belt. When Cody won it way back and he reintroduced the classic belt, I really love that.
Yeah, people rejoiced when that came back, I'll tell you. That's one. Oh, yeah, I remember it. It's so nondescript as well. Anyway, we will move on.
We could do a whole, why don't we do a whole segment on a future episode, take a drink, on the best and the worst wrestling belts in history. I think that would be an excellent, because dude, they have WWE has an identity crisis with their championships. People still identified the winged eagle belt, the IC belt, especially with different straps and stuff and all that stuff that Ultimate Warrior, I believe, brought to the IC and the world belt. The tag belts that Demolition had, that the Hart Foundation had. I don't know why no belt, even with the big WWE logo on it, it doesn't represent the brand in my mind and my heart and my soul as much as those belts.
It's corporate. It's because they think, oh, well, when Super Bowl champion, whoever it is, we can send them a belt and we'll get some photo opportunities. And that's the only reason why they have those butt ugly WWE logo belts. And I hate them. Hate them. I mean, it's bad enough when the Undisputed title came out in 2002, and I thought that was a step down. It turns out it was great compared to what we've got now.
But do you notice, like, when they did, what was the last one? They revealed a brand new belt, and it looked like, and they booed it. Remember, it was not too long ago.
No, which one was this?
They unveiled a new championship belt. I forget what it was after.
So all the women's ones.
It was something to where it was the exact one with a different color. The people booed it, or they didn't do anything. They just like, oh, okay.
They've got so much history, WWE, and for the life of me, I do not understand why they don't just revel in it, especially the designs of the belts, like the WBC boxing belt. I think that's the one. The green strap, the circle with all the flags around it, looks amazing. They haven't changed that in decades. And do you know why? Because it doesn't need changing. It's iconic on its own. You don't... I don't like this whole like toy.
Why do you throw away 50, 60, 70 years of legacy that are attached to that championship? And at a minimum, the Winged Eagle is 32 years old or more.
No, no. The Winged Eagle, I'm going to blow your mind here, Only 10 or 11 years. The Winged
No,
Eagle.
no, no, no. I'm going
Is
to
it not?
disagree. Hogan on a Saturday Night's Main Event way back. It might have been the 90s, not the 80s.
88.
80, it might have been 88. I think it was 88 when he came out to wrestle Andre on that February. So he had the old one with the flags and everything, the big gold belt, and he came out with the Winged Eagle belt.
Yeah.
So that's when it debuted. So we're talking about almost 40 years ago in 2028.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. When you're saying history, I thought you meant the entire span of it. No, because...
No. I'm saying
I got you.
That legacy of that belt alone and that generation of belts, you were in the belt discussion already, that the Intercontinental and the tag belts, just those three right there from the 80s are awesome.
I misunderstood you. I thought you meant the Winged Eagle had been there 20, 30 years. No, it had a 10-year run and then it was replaced with the Big Eagle in 98.
Yeah, just a bigger version that had the eagle on it.
Yeah, that's still looked pretty darn great. I like the round one.
That was the Stevie Knight Heat belt. The bigger version was the Stevie Knight Heat Championship.
Was it really?
That never got created. It got started. Yeah.
Have you got any prototype photos of that?
No, I need to. Dude, we're talking about 2002, 2003. I'm going to, if anybody out there, I would love to make a Stevie Knight Heat Championship belt based on the large winged eagle design, and I will put it up there on the other side of the smart board.
Where we can't see it.
No, we're adding the smart board. Trust me, the company keeps reminding me we need to. But I want it. Yeah, for me, I don't get very sentimental about a lot of stuff, but that period and what we were able to get away with, and more importantly, in a way, you always look at it a little more critically, the things I had planned. Even, dude, I started to print out employee manuals for Stevie Knight Heat, and I was going to try to sell them as merch eventually. Like, I was going to have a talent relations meeting and say, this is the way it's going to go. Somebody speaks up, and I'm like, insubordinate. You and me tonight, I'm going to teach you a lesson. And
you know what would have been great is if, like, eventually you started calling people pal at the end of it, just as a subtle, never explain why. But and then you start wearing the pinstripe suits, you know, the big shoulders, and basically you just morph into Vince over the months.
We are at a point now in 37 episodes where you are completing my sentences for me. Because trust me.
Yes. Oh, that already went that way, did it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So basically, you were doing the Brody Lee thing in AEW.
Yeah, but I was also trying to master the Vince walk down to the ring.
Conor McGregor got it eventually, but I mean that's years of dedication. Right, we've got to move on to the next question.
You need a lot of help chemically to get to that.
Yes. Next one, Samson says, "Hi Stevie, what were some things that you absolutely refused to do, no matter if it meant being fired?" And we've got a follow-up question as well, but we'll leave that at there. Have you ever point blank said no?
No, not really. The only time I ever said no to something was Brian Christopher in Canada. You know, I was supposed to work him on Heat, and I was planning to work Lance Storm. It was his last match in WWE on Sunday Night Heat. Brian Christopher had just, like, literally, we were supposed to do like 6 minutes of just kind of back and forth, the most 50-50 booking, Brian going over. But Brian wanted to suplex me on the ramp. He wanted to drop a leg on me from the top rope to the floor. He wanted to do all these things. And I told Johnny Ace, I go, dude. And I said, well, Brian, they want us to do that. No, we're going to do it this way. I was like, he's putting me in positions where I'm going to get hurt too. You know, certain things. I had a bad back at the time, still do. And getting suplexed on Heat on a railing, or not a railing, on a ramp, it hurts. So I told Johnny, and I go, he was, well, hey, what would you rather do, Stevie? I'm your pal. So I said, I'd rather work Lance because I that's what I was looking forward to doing, because I want to give him the best send-off as an active competitor that he can have. And I don't have a problem putting him over, showcasing him. I only have a problem with Brian because Brian is going way off the reservation and I'm going to get hurt. I'd rather do this. If you want me to work him, that's fine. So I didn't outwardly refuse, but it was like literally the first time I protested anything, I think, since I've been with the company, and it got switched. And Brian wasn't happy. And I did explain to him, like, dude, I'm going to get in trouble as much as you will. I go, and he was like, oh man, you don't want to work me? You think I'm dangerous? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Well, you can be the safest worker on the planet. You suplex me on the ramp, it's going to hurt, right? So it was left out. He didn't talk to me for a while after that, but it all got forgotten after a while, and Lance was pretty happy.
I was just going to say, because that sounds like around 2004. I hadn't realised that Brian Christopher briefly came back in 2004.
Yeah, it was when he came back.
Why didn't he last? Dare I ask?
I don't know. I mean, there's been rumors about, he had demons and stuff going on. I can't speak out of that. But what I can say is that he came back. So basically him coming back with that second chance. And I hate to speak ill because I wish we could both talk about it right now, but he's gone, unfortunately. Looking at it back like that, I'm glad I did it because it was the completely wrong thing to do. And I probably would have got all the heat because he was more politically aligned. The reason why he probably came back for the short time. But I didn't understand it too, because it's like, dude, you just came back and you're already like dictating all this stuff, and it's not even what they told us to do, and it's not safe, and it's heat. So what if they did that on Raw or SmackDown? Probably we were heat, so it was Raw was after heat. So what if somebody did that spot on Raw, then they come to us and they go, what the hell? We were going to do that for a finish or a count out or whatever. That's the way I was thinking.
So
matter of fact, thinking back on it, I said to Brian, sorry to interrupt.
No.
I had said to Brian, well, let's go check to make sure nobody is doing that on Raw. He goes, no, don't do it. Don't worry about it. Nobody's doing it. I go, let's at least ask the agent if we can go outside because it's heat. I'm the GM. I know exactly what to do. I know what the rules are. But that's what I mean. The constant refusal to even have us get any checks or clearance or approval for any of these spots. If somebody said, no, that's good, you can do whatever you guys want. First of all, I believe I was being set up if they did that. But second of all, the fact that he kept doing that, I was like, man, I'm just like in the middle of all this. I just need to get myself out of the whole situation.
So on that episode of Heat that I looked up, he wrestled a local. That was in the Saddle Dome in Calgary, and you ended up wrestling Lance Storm for 5 minutes and 2 seconds. There you go.
Let's do a watch along on that. That was one of my most enjoyable matches. I'm glad Lance got a good send off.
Why was Lance leaving? Was he just done?
No, he was done wrestling. I don't know if he was leaving. That's the strange part. That would have to be a question for him. I don't know what he was doing after that. If he was planning to be an agent, or he opened up his school not long after that, I believe, or somewhere around that. I don't know the timeline. Like I said, when you go back to the previous question, there's certain people I wish I kind of had more conversations with, but we all had our walls up, and Lance is the same type of dude I am. I think I want to show up. I want to do my thing. I want to kind of be left alone as much as possible, and I want to get the hell out of here and go back to my family.
Did you ever wrestle Brian Christopher anywhere?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, right to censor. It was him, Scotty, and Rikishi. I believed I wrestled him in Memphis once as well. And obviously being in Memphis, him being Jerry Lawler's son, that was right along the lines of, but then I just let him call whatever he wanted. If I believe we wrestled there, I know we had a lot to do with them. Right to censor versus Too Cool.
I'm just figuring in the way that you said it there, was he just trying to get noticed by agents? Because I'm looking at where he wrestled. He was on Raw. No, I'm sorry, it's 2014. House show, Heat. Couple of Raws, a couple of Heats, that was it. Was he just trying to get noticed?
Yeah, I think he was just trying to show that he could do all that stuff again, but doing it all on the outside when it doesn't make sense on a secondary show is just kind of, I don't know, maybe it was an overexertion or he wanted to impress everybody so much to say he's better than ever, he can still go. I never asked him. That's another dude. I mean, maybe we would have got along fine. He liked playing video games. I like playing video games. You could be a tag team. Not us. They were disappointed we haven't done the Gurria in a few episodes.
We should just have an entire... If I can master Tony Gurria's impression and you can do Tommy Dreamer for just the entire show...
Oh, everybody be asleep in 90 seconds.
No, sorry, there was a follow-up question. Hey, Stevie, John here from the US. You seem like a morally sound person. I was wondering if there was ever a moment or period of time where you may have compromised your morals for your spot or even just the business.
Absolutely, absolutely. Obviously, being in the wrestling business is a compromise on your morals already, no matter what you do. But the dress, it's probably my biggest. That you want to go back to the regret question. That's regretful. Just wanting to do something, and like the origin or the foundation for that of my thought process to at least try to make it work is the Daisy Dukes and half shirt. Is back then the precedent of that, where every instinct told me no. It turned out to be one of the best things I ever decided to do, and morphed into something where somehow people are cheering a guy in Daisy Dukes and a half shirt. Of course, the weird part is you wear the dress and you interfere, and I'm beating more people up than I ever. I'm invincible. I'm unstoppable in the dress and wig, and at the same time, people are finally chanting my name, even though I'm a mystery woman. They're chanting Stevie, which they never did in WWE. So, in some strange way, I was getting more over with this, but every time I did this and Vince was at the makeup chair and I knew I was being ribbed, and then it became some kind of weird fascination with it. And I don't know which computer, which brain was working at the makeup chair, but
It could be his third one. You don't want it that.
yeah, he was the tear in between the second and third brain. I was trying to keep him on the second brain, but it's just a strange, strange thing. And the whole thing is in wrestling, and this is the thing that gets me with the how should I say, the indoctrination, the institutional, when you're institutionalized, or the Stockholm syndrome, that when somebody does something like this, like Vince McMahon, wear the dress, here's some granny panties, pull them out of the suit jacket pocket, the talent go to you and say, what did you do wrong? What did you do wrong to deserve this? And you know what? Maybe I stood up for my business and some I thought that was pretty innocuous and didn't mean anything, and that just set everybody off to teach this guy a lesson. You know, I talk about before, I don't know if on these episodes, I found it amazing that they always tested the people that never needed to be kept in check. Those are the people they test, not the people that are doing, destroying $40,000 worth of a hotel room, ripping urinals out, doing all these things, being a menace to society, like Big Show. And I always put Paul over. They put Big Show in all these stupid spots to make him look smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And this dude wanted to do nothing but business. So maybe he should have been selfish and said, I can just go out there and knock somebody out. How about that? Or I can work with you. Now, I couldn't do that, but it's not just like, it's not exclusive to me. For some reason, they just have hard ons for people like me, Big Show, and other people. Taz could have drawn huge money. I say that all the time. But because he was too over when he came in, well, we got to put a stop to that, pal. I mean, come on. That's a little off on a tangent, but encapsulated like we all are going to be put in spots where morally, ethically, not to the degree of like wearing a dress is pretty much the pinnacle of trying to emasculate a guy who has, not the faith I have today, but back then, and looking at that and going, man, like if I did have a wife, if I had kids, if I had a family that I was really tight with at the time, I think that would have been like a bridge too far. It would have, like I said, I probably would have said no in those circumstances.
Okay, so our next question is from NordVPN from Parts Unknown. Hi guys, love the show, especially that handsome English rogue. We know you both use NordVPN's easy and intuitive software that allows you to hide your IP address while browsing the internet on any device, help stop data leaks, aid safe file sharing, and keep you safe online, especially using public Wi-Fi. But does Stevie know of any other benefits your viewers can expect when they sign up to NordVPN?
I can't even begin to sell what you said about being a handsome English rogue, but I can tell you about NordVPN. You can access favorite streams and social media websites from across the world that are geo-blocked or otherwise region exclusive without losing any internet speed. Also, you can save money and avoid price discrimination by being able to switch your IP location and see if a product is cheaper for another region. I recently did this with a video game subscription. Also, you can improve your device's cybersecurity and get dark web alerts to discover whether your personal information has been compromised. To grab our huge discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/BWO. We're taking over. Our link will be in. Also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan, and there's no risk at all with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link for it will be in the show description as well as the pinned comment.
Next question. Sam from Tennessee. Great videos and content. I'm a huge fan of the show. Thank you. Who was the hardest wrestler to work with in terms of how stiff they were and or putting matches together? Now, we've talked about who's hit you hardest in matches, or, you know, who might be safe or not safe, or whatever. But that's a completely different question, is who was the hardest person to get along with as far as putting a match together?
Well, I would say this. There's 2 different answers. The stiffest person would be not the hardest person to work with. The stiffest person or the most dangerous person I ever worked was Heidenreich. On a consistent basis, you knew something was going to happen to you, but you just didn't know what it was, which is the worst. It's like, at least if I know I'm going to get crowned with a chair 4 hours earlier, okay, it's a chair shot. It's going to hurt. The hardest person to put matches together with, I would have to say EV2 versus Fortune, the Bound for Glory Lethal Lockdown match. That Beer Money was so hard to work with as far as their stuff. Yeah, they're bringing all the ideas, but when you have something you wanted to do in there, it was very much that match in particular was everybody, not just them, but everybody trying to get their stuff in, and it became the hardest matches to call, and it's not those 2 guys, but I would say in theory, and this is mostly on the indies, when you're working with somebody that just wants to get cool stuff in, maybe use your match as a tape or a digital file to send as a tryout. So they want to get all their moves in, and you're trying to explain a little bit about the psychology of the match and the way it should go. Not saying you won't put somebody over on the indie, but maybe we should do this. But they were so hell bent that this is the match that's going to get them a job, and they need to put as many moves into that as possible, whether they make sense or not. Those are the hardest in general to put together. And some of those talents do go to the main roster and get pushed, and they become even bigger nightmares to call matches with. They're not being malignant. They're not being malicious with this. They are just thinking that one-track mind, I've got to get my stuff in because it's the only thing that I can do to get over. Whereas I saw it the exact opposite way.
Were there any other people that you worked with that, let's say...
But I would say this, just to interrupt again.
Yeah.
Going back to the other story, Brian Christopher and that experience was probably one of the hardest matches to put together that never happened. But it was hard to put together because there was so much, like, back and forth and not allowing me to get things cleared. That made it extremely stressful.
Was there anyone that you worked with that just absolutely didn't respect your veteran status? And then
lots of people. They continue that today. Lots of people,
okay,
lots
but let's
of
say
people,
someone in
lots
the
of-
business like... I'm sorry, I was going to say someone who's been in the business 6 months and you've been in it 25 years and they're trying to immediately start dictating what you're going to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time. But I didn't... See, that's what's different about me. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. I'm willing to pull the guy aside and kind of talk to him, or just let them get it out and be like, yeah, well, I can take this, this, and this, but those are ones I have a bad neck or a back. Can we work around that? But what I do before anything to set people back, especially on the indies, back on their heels in a good way, I walk up and I'm in the indie locker room. I still introduce myself to everybody because I'm new to the locker room. I find the kid that I'm working because I remember the terror with me saying, how do I approach so-and-so and talk or start this whole process? I will go up to them and say, hey, I'm Stevie Richards. We're working tonight. What do you like to do? What are you comfortable doing? That usually sets them away like, oh, I don't have to shoehorn anything in. He'll just do this and that. And he's willing to work with me. I don't want to turn around and tell him to take 50 different. It's a weird reverse psychology type thing. But if they did do 15 different things and I'm sitting there and I'll be like, I don't do the cigarette, put it out and go, ah, let me see a locker up or any of that stuff. But what I do say is, I just want to let you know that I'm very limited. I'm not very athletic. I can take certain things, but if you're looking to like, if it requires like an explanation longer than 30 seconds, I'm probably not going to be able to take it. So, and I let them know that, and usually it turns out really well. And I tell them first and foremost, if I'm putting somebody over, and this is for anybody out there, if somebody's putting me over, you tell me how you want to do it. You tell me how you want to do it. You're doing me a huge favor. I want you to be comfortable. And usually subconsciously, whether the talent is smartened up or still very green, they understand that courtesy affords me some vetoes as well to do that.
Next question. Louis from Germany says, I assume he is your friend, but was there any friendly competition with Maven when you both started your original YouTube channels at practically the same time? And have you kept in contact with Maven since doing that video with him?
Yeah, I talk to Maven every day. I text him every morning. We share devotionals back and forth. Myself and Renee Dupre do that as well. No, when we both started at the same time, he told the story. I saw that he started this channel. I called him, left a message, and then texted him and said, "Hey, man, congratulations." We talked for a while. We hadn't connected in years. And this was something based on, more so how should I say, I felt really bad as far as the fact that we were very friendly in WWE. He went through all his stuff, and I never reached out to him during that time. And I felt so bad about that. I didn't feel like a real friend, although we felt like we had a real friendship in WWE. So that was one of the first things when I talked to him was like, man, I'm so sorry. I didn't keep in touch with you. I didn't call you or text you, especially during that time in your life. He accepted my apology. We went on and we talked text almost every day, mostly text. But yeah, there's friendly competition because I saw Devon's channel, like Devon's using good camera, good microphone. What did I send you? Dude, we need 8K cameras. We need a better studio. I got to rip out this acoustic panel. So it's a friendly competition, but I want Devon, I want Maven, I want Renee, I want anybody in the space, especially workers, because I'm always worker friendly when it comes to the content. I want the workers to all make money doing this. And, who are you going to listen to too? I would rather watch Maven or Devon Dudley talk about their experiences in the business and how they would rate matches and how they would talk about things than your favorite guy. And
Which one's
Devon and
that?
Maven are not charging $14 a month.
Oh, that guy. Yeah. I was trying to think. Yes. Okay. I'll go the hint then. Why is Maven so successful then? Because I was trying to sort of square this circle as well, how he just like got so incredibly successful so quickly. And I think it's because every YouTube channel that I've done, and this one as well, we appeal to the existing wrestling fan only. Whereas Maven is very much more inclusive. He explains every term that he uses, and it's sort of like more beginner friendly in that sense. And I think that's done him very, done him very well as a methodology.
Well, also Maven has poise. He has presence. He comes off very professional. He comes off like a star to me. I mean, I have a prediction that Maven will go back to some mainstream form of content, whether he goes back to the shopping network like he had the job presenting before, he goes back to wrestling or something completely different than that. He has an appeal. He's Maven Huffman. Nobody can be Maven. Nobody has Maven's experience. And the fact, like the previous question that talked about, his vulnerability. See, in wrestling, when people do podcasts in wrestling or shows in wrestling, what do they usually do? I'm right about everything. This person's wrong. I'm an expert. Let me talk about all the things I know and how great I am. Maven, he completely throws all his flaws, all his failures, all his low points, the roller coaster ride of not only the wrestling business, but his life, and also educates everybody on a 101 type of level. Like you said, what's a mark? What's a heel? What's a baby face? How to do this? How to do that? And he's become incredibly popular and he deserves it. I mean, there's not enough people in the wrestling business that are legitimately happy for somebody else and then turns around and says, How can I make my product better? Maven, myself, Devon, Renee, other people in space all motivate each other and then encourage each other and say, dude, that's it. You're on the right path. I love that. There's a big fraternity of wrestling content creators now, actual wrestlers that content create that I think support each other and uplift each other.
You mentioned at the beginning when you were talking about Maven that he was going through his own stuff as well. I mean, how much are you aware of some of the difficulties that he had? Because obviously, coming through ostensibly a game show to winning a contract with the WWE, he's spoken about it before. Some people weren't as accepting of that fact than they might have been. And obviously, anyone else who was in that position would have snapped the hand off, to get a contract with the WWF at that time. But what kind of struggles do you know that Maven was going through at that point?
Well, I knew the fact that people looked at him and looked down on him and looked down on the tough enough competition and didn't really understand it. There's gatekeeping in wrestling. Tough Enough did a lot more good than bad. Al Snow can talk about it a lot more because he's fought that fight and argued that debate much more than I ever could. But basically, he came in with 2 strikes against him and also advertising that you're getting paid way more than some of the guys working full time right off the bat for winning the contest.
Yeah, but he wasn't. That's the thing. He said he was only making 50 grand.
No, it was over the course of the contract that he was making the 250. So it was work, but the work that they didn't smarten the boys up to it, that he's making less than me with 75 downside. He was on house shows and he was figured in, so he made over. But that's why I hope I did, because I noticed that. That's why I hope that Maven recognizes that he was a part of Stevie Night Heat. I accepted him and we worked together a lot and it made him feel comfortable to some degree. And I think a lot of people who are actually on Heat a lot, the Vals, the Spikes, other people also accepted him more than the main roster guys that were always on Raw and SmackDown. I was not aware of the actual post WWE trouble until I saw the mugshot. And my first instinct was reaching out for him. But then again, my scared part was, if I reach out to him, is he going to be in a state that I'm not going to be able to communicate with him? I didn't know what I was thinking, but I'll tell you what, that's a regret. That's a big regret to not reach out to him. I'll never make that mistake again.
Yeah, I was thinking about Maven, how sort
he
of...
just texted me right now.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he did.
What's he saying? Stop talking about me.
I sent him a picture of myself and my cat, so he hearted that.
Oh, you mean the same picture you sent me?
Yes. Exactly.
I wasn't joking because you sent that me, and I was saying using your time wisely, and I wasn't joking. You are. Just relaxing is using your time wisely, because I missed the times when I was bored. I've not been bored in years, man.
Well, hey, play some video games with me, you'll be bored. Or watch some of my matches, you'll be bored.
Instantly. Oh, well, someone's put a Stevie Night Heat compilation that's 8 hours. We'll put that. We plugged that quite a lot. That was your perfect time to go, aha. Just because we're on Maven, I want to ask one more thing. It's like, did the WWF really sort of do him dirty in the sense that they threw him out there with practically no training? And then obviously he has to earn his respect slowly but surely, with Bob Holly and whoever else he worked with. But I sort of think, why... Were they just trying to capitalize on the popularity on Tough Enough, or did they want to just see if he was going to sink or swim and likely sink?
Well, 2020 hindsight, you look back at it, yes. Wrestling is sink or swim. I talked about that in ECW. You're thrown out there. It's not like now where they're trying to handhold you through PC, NXT, maybe house shows, then TV. No, he was thrown out there, and basically, I think it was a good thing. Maybe not it was a very stressful thing, but Maven's whole storyline was he won Tough Enough and he had to prove himself, and he was green and he had to learn, and you had Al being a mentor and then guys testing him in the ring. So they blended reality with what his character was on TV, which was basically Maven Huffman. So is it the most ideal way to do it? Not really, because you're not really cluing the guy in to, hey, this is your character now. They made it feel very real to Maven, not Raven, but Raven's a hot young rookie on his way up too. But Maven, definitely, I don't think he was smartened up on day one unless Al did, like, hey, this is what it's going to be for you. And I think that might have given him a little bit of perspective. But it was still a really, really tough spot, especially when nobody knew it was broken up over 5 years. They thought, here's your $250,000. And it's like, dude, I've never sniffed 250 my 10 years in the company. Neither did Maven. Well, he did. He did 1 year. He said he made like 292 or 300.
Jeremy in Western Canada says, in the 2005 Royal Rumble, speaking of Tough Enough, what was the reaction backstage to the chops on Daniel Puder? How did he react once backstage?
I was not at that pay-per-view, but I do remember seeing it after that. And that's one of those things, like, you're teaching Daniel Puder a lesson. Once again, we talked about Maven. Maybe he wasn't smartened up. You didn't smarten this kid up to the fact that don't go in there and shoot, even though you're a shooter. Like, those kids were not clued into anything. There was that one body slam thing with Big Show where the guy legitimately was trying to body slam him. And Big Show had to kind of ding him a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Daniel Puder has done shoot interviews where he's talked about, they should have just told me to work. I would have worked. But they didn't tell anybody that. And that puts not only Daniel and those kids in a spot, man, it put Kurt Angle in a really awkward spot. He could have had his arm broken because this kid didn't know any different. So there's no question in my mind that that incident was directly connected to, we're going to chop and beat this kid up in the ring and he can't fight back. But what if you were dealing with somebody who was not mentally stable, which some people in MMA, I'm not talking out of turn, they might be mentally unstable. What if you started to do that and Daniel Puder goes, screw this, and starts lighting everybody up? Now, they eventually would dogpile him and get on him, but he could have done some damage to them too. So he did better business by just saying, okay, I get it. And even if he wasn't, he knew, okay, they're going to lay into me. And really, if you have an MMA background, if they're just chopping you and forearming you, is it really that bad? Compared to what that dude did in MMA?
You weren't on the SmackDown roster at the time, were you?
I might have been on the SmackDown roster, but this was a Canadian pay-per-view, and I know for a fact, if you're not figured in and you're not in the Rumble, I'd never been in a Royal Rumble, usually they would not fly you. It's just extra logistic steps to go through customs, get the work visa, all that stuff. So I wasn't on this one.
Next question, Rob in Montreal. Very international flavour.
Yeah.
We've got, I mean, everyone's international to me practically. But anyway, Rob in Montreal. Hello, Stevie, and hello, James. I'd like to ask if you got to know Woman, the late Nancy Benoit, or Nancy Sullivan at the time, at all while you were working in an ECW. When wrestlers talk about her, they mention how nice she was and rarely anything more. People have plenty to say about Miss Elizabeth and Sherry Martel, and I feel Nancy more than carried her weight when paired with the Sandman, one who sought out a way into wrestling. Nancy stayed in ECW after her husband Kevin Sullivan left. Did she fit that well in the island of misfit toys? Many thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Excellent question. Did I know her very well? No, but we did have some interaction with the Sandman when she was with the Sandman before he started. It was her, then it was Missy Hyatt, then he was on his own. So we did have some dealings with them. She was always pretty nice to me. Not really, like, how should I say it? Not really lengthy conversations, but nothing to make me think she was being aloof or avoiding me or big leaguing me or anything like that. I remember her way back when her and Sullivan in Florida legitimately scared me as a kid. I discovered NWA, then somehow I discovered Florida. I think he was in Georgia too, but mostly Florida. And seeing her as the fallen angel with him doing the devil gimmick and everything, dude, that was scary. So I remember that when I met her as a woman, and I was just like, wow, this is kind of surreal that grew up watching her. I didn't tell her that. I knew enough by then not to say that, but she probably would have friendly, made fun of me or whatever, not in a mean way. But, thanks for making me feel old. What I would say to somebody when they're like, hey, my son grew up watching you. Ugh. But she fit in great. And obviously, here's the thing. Kevin Sullivan, Kevin leaves, but he's still very much connected to ECW, very much connected to Paul Heyman, very much connected to everybody on the roster there. So it wasn't like he wasn't there anymore. It wasn't like she wasn't going to fit in. She was a worker. She was right up there with Luna Vachon. she was like one of the boys in a way, So as far as Island of Misfit Toys, she fit in with the Island of Misfit Toys. Then she fit in with the corporate WCW with Flair. So she could fit in anywhere she chose to fit in.
Yeah, I really loved her with Flair in '96. I loved that pre-NWO.
Molly Holly was there too.
Oh, that was later on. That was '99 when she was.
Yeah.
Are you talking ECW or WCW?
Well, she was with.
Yeah, she was Miss Madness with. Yeah.
But she was there before that as part of 3 people. Wait, there's 3 women with Flair, and woman was one of them.
Yeah. But that was Elizabeth, woman. I dare say Deborah.
It might have been, but I thought Molly was in there somewhere too with the 3 of them.
No, I think she came later. I think she was. Yeah, I think Molly came.
She was
like
with Savage,
98, 99.
Gorgeous George, and Miss Madness, right? That's when she did it.
I thought, yeah, she was Miss Madness, wasn't she? Mona?
Yes. Yeah, because she had the sad, like the evening gown with the, Miss
yeah,
America
because Deborah also had the sash and the evening gown.
Yes, so I remember the tiara and everything like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. She was. Do you know what? Deborah was really great in that role as well. And Mongo, he was a terrible wrestler, but he was like terrible in a really entertaining way. But his interviews were fantastic. He was one of the best interviews in that company, and no one remembers him for it.
He was like a how can I say it? He had like 10 times the charisma, but his promos reminded me of the Jeff Farmer promo in a way, because it was like stop-start sentences, and then he'd be like, "That's right, baby," at the end. And that's the cutoff. Him as a commentator wasn't as bad as, you get the little dog and everything, but it wasn't as bad in the beginning of Nitro. I mean, he's no Art Donovan. How much this guy weigh? What's this? Remember that King of the Ring with Art Donovan?
That's what the one King of the Ring I've never watched all the way through because I tap out. Or you know when you're praying for deafness, some hysterical deafness going on, so you can just watch. Oh, also so that Jerry Lawler Roddy Piper
come
thing.
In and slap you in the ear while Art Donovan's commentating.
Yes, yeah, 1 for each ear, for goodness' sake. Next one, Ant from Liverpool says, "Hi Stevie, my question is, who would be your Mount Rushmore of guys that never won the world title but should have in terms of WWF or WWE?"
First one that comes to mind, Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect, 100%. Who else? Man, that's a tough one. 3 more. Who never won the world title? That's a strange question. My goodness. You're talking about the WWE title. Man, Mr. Perfect is the absolute first name that comes instantly to my mind that's never won a world title. I would say there's certain elements, depending upon how the gimmick would be perceived. But man, Val had everything. If he was presented a different way, he was in the same class as Edge, Christian, Jericho, those Canadian wrestlers that all came up together. And Val had more of the walking through an airport like a giant, I would say Val, if you presented him differently, he carried the IC title very, very strongly with the right to censor and even outside of that. So who else would I think? Test would be another one that could be.
Really?
Yeah, if he was presented the right. You're talking about pure size and.
No, I'm talking about the whole package. I'll give you a couple of names: Ted DiBiase, Roddy Piper, Owen Hart, British Bulldog. There's some Rick Rude.
There you go. All right, I gotta re-amend because I was trying to think that particular year. This is the interesting thought. Talking about this with everybody with the English conglomerate that's in this question. You and Ann. That era. Big 80s wrestling with monsters going after Hogan and then the IC title tier. You had anybody could be today a world champion, but back then it was harder to get into that world title spot. We're talking about a modern list compared to back then where everybody, back then, even talking about people like Duggan was massively over for what he was. Slaughter was world champion, but Slaughter deserved to be world champion as G.I. Joe before he turned heel. That's another guy.
And then he got fired. He got fired because he accepted the figure deal, didn't he? Yeah. And the thing it was, people forget that I think it's almost like the Bob Backlund. It's almost like the the Mandela effect. That you think Bob Backlund disappeared and then when Hulk Hogan turned up. But no, they tagged together. Bob Backlund was there for the better part of a year.
But Backlund actually acted like sort of like a player coach to Hogan for a short time.
Yeah, so, and Slaughter was there at the same time. He was the second most popular guy behind Hogan at that time, so that wasn't... But he was already, he was WWF champion briefly. I've got some more names here. Owen Hart. I've already said some of these. Luna? Oh, Goldust. Some has said. We can't...
Oh, man, Goldust is heel Goldust.
Yeah.
As world champion, but then we talk about advertisers. Same thing with the Val thing. We gotta put that in there. But I think up until the end of the Attitude Era, almost anybody had what it took to be a world champion. The gateway to get into that, man, was a lot harder to break through that because so many people were so great. Now it's like that old Night Court episode that I bring up a few times. It's my turn to be world champion. No, it's my turn to be world champion. Everybody gets a turn at world champion right now. You know?
Yeah. And nobody ever says modern names when that question's asked. And that question's a fairly standard Mount Rushmore, but no one ever says modern names. Because when you're in the era of 2010s and like Jake Hager's been world champion, or any number of people won the belt.
Well, let's look at what I said. I was in WWE, started in '99. Then when I found my feet underneath me, got into proper shape, learned how to work that WWE style and navigate a little bit better, I was told I was too small to be IC champ. That's the tail end of that. Then it all switched. So, yeah, you brought up a better Mount Rushmore to me. I just instantly think of Mr. Perfect, but Rick Rude, whoever, Owen Hart was one. But Owen Hart, see, back then too, DiBiase kind of technically won it, but then they made it,
not in the record books, baby. But somehow Andre did. That's the weird thing. I'm going to give you a couple...
Let me finish with this.
Oh, yeah.
Because the old adage back then was, does this person need a belt to get over? Piper, Rude, Owen, even Mr. Perfect and all those people, it would have been great to have a world title run, but almost in a way, especially with Piper, it almost adds to his mystique and the underground kind of lovability of a Piper because he was never world champion. So he's always your underdog favorite. If he had won the world title, would some of that bloom come off the rose of his mystique?
Here's someone that people may not think of, but he was actually considered when, the belt was his most potent, his most powerful, his most important. Snooker. Jimmy Snooker. Because he really was. The problem was is that, one, he allegedly murdered his girlfriend and that he was a terrible drug addict. But he was the most popular guy in the company, way above Backlund in '83. He, I believe, was picketing or protesting, or basically he wanted to be the champion. He thought he'd earned it. He was the most popular guy in the company, and then Hogan comes in, and that sort of kicked off his downward spiral even worse. That's
an excellent question, but then we're in a vacuum of talent, and obviously Snooker was a world title talent that drew money. If they had that much merchandise, he would probably be a top merch seller. But the outside issues and demons or whatever situation take you out of that. There's certain people that we mentioned that might have had other issues, not politically aligned, but that was enough to make them never win the world title.
I'm going to give you a few more names and then you give me your Mount Rushmore. So we said Goldust. I saw him before. Scott Hall, which a lot of people say. George the Animal Steele's not actually a bad shout. Greg the Hammer Valentine. Terry Funk for the WWF title at one point. Honky, Jake the Snake, Jesse the Body Ventura. I can't really see that one. Junkyard Dog, maybe for I don't know. There's a couple of weird names here that I'm just skipping past. Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. How could we forget? Rikishi's an interesting name to bring up, and Tatanka's a real interesting name to bring up. Regal has been brought up. So there you go. I've given you a bunch of names. Who was your Mount Rushmore?
Well, I'm, revisionist history. I'm going to go with people that have carried titles before and even some world titles in other companies. Mr. Perfect, number one. Rick Rude. These Minnesota guys are awesome. Rick Rude would be another one. I would say Owen beating Brett for the world title would be something else. That's number three right there.
It would have to be in '94, though. It wouldn't make sense in any other year.
Yeah, when he had his run, he beat him at WrestleMania 10, and then, after that, if he beat him for the world title after Brett won it back, that would be some good heat. That would
And
be where
there's
Money in the Bank would be awesome if Owen cashed in and took it right from Brett at the end of WrestleMania 10.
there are photos out there with Owen holding the title because he held Brett's title. I don't know if he just stole the belt or whatever, but there are fan photos of him holding the belt, and he looks good with the belt. Yeah.
All right, number 4 is gonna be the one I'm gonna have to lean based on your, reaction to me saying he did win it. I would have to say the hottest heel at the time and buying people to protect him and the title would be DiBiase. That would be the 4th one. So perfect, Rude, Owen, DiBiase, and you might not have altered wrestling history, but man, you would have altered their careers to an extent and made them bigger draws.
And of course, the story is that Ted was going to win it, but Honky Tonk refused to lose the IC title to Savage on a Saturday night's main event, and in turn, Savage ended up winning the title at WrestleMania 4 instead of DiBiase. So if all that hadn't happened, we would have had our first heel win in the main event of WrestleMania 4 instead of 16 with Triple H.
Wow, that's some great history I didn't know about. The other thing too is with Honky as champion, being IC champion, you can play with that a lot more in that gimmick of holding it longer and not deserving it. The world title is kind of, even back then, you at least had to have some level of not being a complete, chicken, what heel that runs from everybody. You had to draw people to do it. Now you would have thought, well, tonight's going to be the night he loses it, which does sell tickets, but for how long? There still has to be something where you're like, this guy, Mr. Perfect, Owen Hart, Rick Rude, Ted DiBiase, they're still pretty formidable and they've kicked some ass. They're pretty bad dudes that I don't want to mess with. Where Honky Tonk is like, yeah, I could probably beat that guy. You know what I mean? On the IC tier, the IC title, it's just enough heat. But if you leave people with that empty feeling every night at the end of the show, because Honky Tonk had gotten disqualified, counted out, Jimmy Hart, you see what I mean? Hart Foundation too, Danny Davis, I think was in somewhere during that time.
86, 87.
That was the tail end of Danny Davis, right? As the heel referee and then joining the Hart Foundation.
Next question. We've only got a couple left, then we're going to get into a bit of news and a bit of a what went wrong. We've not really decided what we were even doing for what went wrong. We'll work that out in the break. Next question is from Laura Kenny. Hi, Stevie and James. I'd like to ask, what was it like being around so many active drug users in ECW and probably WCW and even WWF to an extent when you don't use anything? Would people hide it from you or just not care? And also, what is the most danger you've been in outside of the ring, like perhaps a road trip situation where you thought, should I be here? Why am I here? Love from Massachusetts. And there's also a follow-up question that was very, once again, thematically similar from Eric Blue Ridge GA. Ask Stevie how he avoided the drug and alcohol issues that affected many of the wrestlers during his career.
I think I know Eric because I used to go to Blue Ridge all the time. My wife and I were looking for a place in the mountains when we lived in Georgia. And I believe it is. If it's Eric, great. If it's not, it's a good story. Eric, or whoever it was, drove by. And my wife and I were outside this place looking at a storefront. We were going to do some kind of business in Blue Ridge. And he stopped, turned around, he parked, came out, introduced himself, very polite. We talked for about 5 minutes and, we were talking about what we were doing there. They were on a vacation that weekend in the Blue Ridge area. And he was a really nice guy. And he sent me a message, I think, not long after that, thanking me for not being like a jerk. I guess he met other people in the business that were not quite as friendly or inviting or anything like that. I've always tried to have good self-awareness about, I don't see myself as much as anything. But there's other people that might look at that as like, wow, that's a great experience that I won't forget. And he was just a nice guy. It was just like meeting somebody who you never met before, talk and ask me a couple wrestling questions, but more questions about how I like Blue Ridge and what we're doing there and everything like that. So really nice. If it's Eric, good to hear from you again. If it's not, hello to whoever that was. Okay, how did I survive? I was called the clueless putz in ECW. A lot of stuff I was clueless about. A lot of things I was just not like, I didn't have the perspective or the awareness, I should say, around me about what was going on. Now, when I was in ECW, it wasn't in the stage of New Bane. New Bane was after I left. That was say if I seen somebody shooting up New Bane, that might be like, oh my God, what is this? But for the most part, I didn't witness anything outside of people drinking, mostly the Sandman, which was his gimmick, and drinking and doing whatever. I never saw people taking pills, although there was stuff when I was in the ring and other people in the ring that it was evident somebody had taken pills or drank a little bit too much. In WWE, WCW, that was hidden a little bit more outside of the people that bragged, last night, brother, we weren't here and we got drunk and we did this. And it was like white noise to me. And I never really put myself around that. I got into the business to make, save, and hopefully be able to have money when I left the business. And that's not what wrestling is. Wrestling back then was a lot more about getting pushes based on who you partied with, who you did certain things with, who you're politically aligned with. I know I use that term a lot, but all those things actually did make you more politically favorable. I didn't know there was a theory I had. It's a lot like corporate America and other things. If they know they have something on you, like for instance, earlier, I talked about, having debt, having a mortgage, a car payment, kids to feed, a family to support, that a company will take advantage of you because you need the job. I'm wondering if there's some kind of, I don't know what the term would be. Like we did drugs together, we drank together. I saw your flaws. I know you do some really messed up stuff. I'm going to push you, but we're not going to stooge each other out or stooge each other off. Do you know what I'm saying? We have blackmail material on each of us. So therefore we'll take care of each of us, but don't screw me over because I got the nuclear button right here.
So, what was the most extreme thing that you saw regarding drugs in the locker room? Then, just nothing much of anything, or
Not really. I mean, the funniest story I could think of, and I think I've told this story before, I was at Dan McDevitt's wedding. He runs Maryland Championship Wrestling. This is way back. We were, we were there. He invited a lot of wrestlers. Already a bad mistake right there to have a lot of wrestlers at a wedding. And myself and Brian Hallhouse were supposed to pick up the Iron Sheik. And I think I've told this story before. I'll lead up to the point of just something that completely shocked me. We went to get him. We're knocking on the door, knocking on the door, knocking on the door. He's not answering. The TV's blasting. There's steam coming from under the thing. We're about to break the door down because we think, my God, the Sheik is dead. Banging on the door. He opens the door. He's got a towel. He's in the shower. The whole room is just a steam room. And the Sheik is like trying to get ready. We're 20 minutes late for the wedding already. So like, I already know you don't try to like nudge him along and hurry him up because he's very testy that way. So I told Brian, hey, man, tell him to hurry up. Right. So Brian's like, hey, Sheik, come on, man, we're running late. Can you hurry up? And Sheik goes, huh? Who the fuck are you to tell this? I was wrestling. He starts doing Howard Stern Iron Sheik promo. F this, F that. He goes, you're not good and respectful like Stevie Ritchie, a piece of shit. I go, yeah, Sheik, I tried to tell him, I did, I hold. So we're laughing about it. We get to the wedding. This is the part that answers the question. I'm sitting with Sheik, which already I'm like, I'm in the greatest seat in the head. Sheik is here. I'm here. Brian is on the opposite side of the Sheik, which Sheik is still cutting the promo that Brian, not me, but Brian made him hurry up. So we're sitting there. A kid comes up. Sheik opens up his briefcase. He has 8x10s that he's going to try to sell at the wedding, which is awesome already. We're sitting there. The kid's looking. This little 13-year-old kid walks up and he's like, oh, you want a picture? Does all the Sheik stuff, tries to plug the combo price and everything. Here comes a little baggie that comes out of the briefcase, the Halliburton, and goes on top of one of the 8x10s. And I look and Brian looks like bug-eyed, like, what? And the kid goes, what's that? And Sheik, like the kid, the 13-year-old kid should know what the hell this is, goes, crack, you dumb son of a bitch. I was like, oh no, we gotta go. We gotta go, folks. Thanks for doing So that was the most shock that he just literally put right on the table and then chastised the kid for not knowing what this baggie contained.
That's maybe the most Iron Sheik story I've ever heard.
He's missed though. See, this is what I mean, even though that's like those kinds of stories afterwards are kind of like the wrestlers have a lot of trouble usually plugging themselves back into normal society. And that's an example. But you know, but the funny part is after all that, Sheik went right back to like telling stories to the kid and being very lucid. And I'm like, I'm so confused right now.
We should do an episode on the Sheik.
Shocking. It's shocking, but it wasn't a, oh my God, I'm going to. Well, yeah, I think there was a part where I was like, man, there's cops here and we're going to get arrested. But I didn't want to move because I'm sitting next to the Sheik. So I'm in for a full night of entertainment.
Has anyone ever offered you within the business in a locker room a little something? I mean, like, how'd you resist pain pills? Because, I mean, obviously you're going to be in pain a lot.
I was in pain a lot, but back then drugs cost money too. So I was trying to be extremely cheap with that.
Who did the? I'm sorry to interrupt. Who did the whole thing where they'd have a bottle and they go in the locker room? Did that happen often? I mean, you don't have to name names, but
like I said before, I'm probably I had the blinders on. I don't remember. Like it wasn't my dog whistle like other people when you shake the pill bottle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically.
Like
but I've only got vitamin.
Like,
I've only got vitamin D gummies, but that thing.
Nah, you're off access rejection. Your microphone's working great. I didn't hear it shake at all. Nope.
There you go.
Still working.
Very good.
Did anybody ever offer me anything? Yeah, I mean, when I was banged up or something, but I will give Raven credit. Raven had told people not to push that stuff on me, and Raven was big into that scene. But Raven, just like I said, the big brother complex, Raven can treat me a certain way, or Scott Levy can treat me a certain way, but he's still going to protect me as a protege, as, a person underneath him that's under his learning tree. He was very much, I remember saying to one person, just do not push that stuff on this kid. Do not get that kid any of that, because he did not want me to, I guess, have the same kind of problems of getting hooked with that stuff.
Did anyone push steroids on you, or were you ever tempted? Because I believe you're a lifelong clean athlete.
Well, people have said before in WWE, like, if you just gain 20 pounds, we could, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do steroids. No, we didn't say that. Well, you told me if I gained 20 pounds by WrestleMania, which is like a month away. I mean, I don't know. I work out pretty hard. I think I'm working out pretty hard. No, we're not asking you to do that. But if you could put a little more size on, they play that game whether you're on it or not. Could you gain 10 pounds? Could you lean out? Could you get bulky? Could you get shredded? Could you do this? That was the game they played with me a lot. But no one ever outwardly will ever ask you or say, if you do this. It's kind of like the superhero movie. If you want to be Thor, you have to look like Thor. Now, how you do that, we have 3 months, so good luck. Hey, I have a friend who's a nutritionist or a personal trainer that will probably be beneficial and can teach you a whole new regimen on how you can gain that 20 pounds.
Okay, so that was the end of the fan questions for this episode. I can very much see us doing a part 3 at some point down the line. I promise we won't do this like every week or every other week, but we'll definitely deep dive through the rest of the questions and try and find some interesting ones as well. But first, there's one bit of news that we had to talk about before we get to the cage match comparisons between AEW Revolution with Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. Did we even advertise that at the beginning? Whatever. And then CM Punk and Seth Rollins. We have to talk about this. It's basically about a 7 to 9 second piece of audio, right, from a lady called Damaris Lewis, who I've talked about it, Dutch has talked about it. Now it's your turn. Who gives the worst interview of all time? And she says this.
One thing I learned about pro wrestlers, y'all know you're going to win before anybody else does. So thank you for teaching me that.
It's amazing.
What was Dutch's reaction? I'm just curious as a viewer of the story time with Dutch Mantel that I haven't seen this clip yet. What did he say?
I think he did this phase where like that.
Yeah,
I don't think he could believe his ears.
But that's the thing. You did a video on James Romero channel where you talked about that she was talking about something completely different in a completely different vein that was connected to the pre-show, which doesn't sound anything like what she said during the actual show. So I don't, for everybody, and you said Camille is coming out at everybody saying they're super mean and everything. When you played that for me or you sent me that and then I looked deeper into it, I'm like, there's no other way to interpret this in a live crowd after the cage match, right? This was after Ospreay and Fletcher in the cage. Not only did you just say that was all fake and they knew who was going to win, which the fans already know, but it's like, don't put it right on my nose like that. Don't tell me I wasted my money to see something that's fake. You put it out perfectly. So please, everybody, watch that clip concerning this. But for people after the fact, playing Monday Morning War quarterback, playing revisionist history, and for Camille and everybody to say, no, you just heard her wrong. Is that essentially Camille saying?
Basically, in that all these wrestlers are so reactionary, or wrestling fans are so reactionary, and it's like, well,
don't do anything to make us
there's no
react.
other. Yeah, there's no other reasonable way of reacting to it or interpreting it any other way. And the other thing was she was talking. She's very intelligent. She's a very deep thinker. It's like, what?
What is she?
Where's the evidence?
Through.
Exactly. Thing is, I can actually sort of see where she's coming from. Actually, she just said it in the most boneheaded, stupid way imaginable. Which everyone said something stupid. I understand it. Rarely on pay-per-view, in front of 11,000 people in an arena.
Well, I got to counter that.
Oh, God. What have you done?
And said stupid things. We actually have to do a watch along. I'm going to tell you after the show. So it's one of the most infamous segments in the new ECW history. An absolute rib that I leaned into, and we will do it on either as a YouTube exclusive or a future episode.
Okay, don't even tell me what it is.
Not yet.
I don't
I'll
know.
tell you after
Just
the
show
show.
it me. Oh, well, I'm looking forward to it. Right, okay, this sort of opens up its second avenue of something to explore then, is that some people are like, what, don't you know wrestling is this? I'd call it fake. I know a lot of wrestlers, or some fans have an issue with the word fake, and they call it predetermined or whatever. I don't know where you... I mean, you've called wrestling fake a ton of times, but then you always walk it back. What's your opinion on that word?
Well, I use that word because it is a word that catches people's attention. I use fake and subjective, meaning the whole goal is to not hurt your opponent, and the decision of who goes over, who wins, who does the job, who loses, is subjective on someone else, a third party, a promoter, somebody in management, somebody in power, or you just try to figure it in with somebody there. You're never really in control of any of that stuff. We talked about it earlier in the show, or actually to watch along on Patreon. I didn't know that Moxley and Adam Copeland have refused to lose, so they included Christian to do the job in the match.
That's a fan thing.
That's a
yeah, that's not an official report or anything. I think a lot of people are reporting
when you talk about it, I consider it to be an official report. You didn't preface it with it was a fan.
I did. I said fan theories.
Okay. Well, what's the fan theory on this girl? Let's switch the subject back to this promo. How are we supposed to interpret it? Is it, hey, everybody on this show tonight, is this the way she meant it? No matter what you do on this show or in AEW or in pro wrestling, no matter where you are on the card, at the bottom or the top, each and every one of you is a star, and each and every one of you is a winner in my book. Is that what she's saying?
That's what she's meaning.
That's she didn't say anything.
That's
like
not what
that.
she said. No, as I say this and it really annoys people. It's like, we've all agreed as a society what English words mean. And the words that she used very much did not mean what she intended in that. Here's the other thing.
It probably doesn't help.
I'm
going to interrupt you because this is probably where you're going. It doesn't help that she literally smiled like a Cheshire cat and looked at everybody like, I just dropped that. Like she was going to drop the mic after that. Like nothing more. Did you get that impression? Like, guess what, everybody? I'm about to give you some knowledge.
Yeah, she was trying to. Well, she's a very deep thinker. Do you think, in her own mind, I believe she was trying to put over wrestling?
In her
Do you
mind.
think that, or
Now you're
yeah,
talking about what she meant, what she thought, what she felt, and what was said. And these three things are together. The thing where she said it is the part that goes way off script.
yeah? With Camille's sort of retort, I just like. Yeah, I know you want to stick up for your friend, but basically, what you've done is you're just making yourself like an idiot, and her an even bigger idiot because now you're just keeping the story in the news for an extra day. I mean, just try and brush past it and accept that she said something wrong, and it's not actually everybody else's fault.
Well, let's not forget too, you talk about Camille. I didn't even know she was still with the company. And then you told me she was in the movie.
She's still with
And
the
she's still
company,
with
and
the
that's the
company.
other
She
thing.
was not used at all to promote this movie on AEW. So her and Tony Storm are in the movie, correct?
Yeah, as well as Britt Baker.
Well, that's a whole nother story. We've covered that in clips in the past. So you're not using your own talent to say they are movie stars as well to give them more credibility. You bring out, like you said, somebody that wasn't even in the top 3 or 4 billing on the movie to
She was
promote it.
13th.
So everybody, I mean,
13th.
everybody, I know the other girl because I worked with her on Heels. So she was the,
Oh, did you really? I didn't
yeah,
know you worked on
I was
Heels.
stunt double and I was an extra.
Okay, right. So, yeah, the whole Camille thing is just bizarre, I think, because I know you don't watch AEW every week. You'll watch what I send you and all the important stuff, of course. But basically, Camille went from Diesel to nothing. She just disappeared. In fact,
She went from
actually, she
Diesel
went
to
last
Stevie
time she was.
Richards.
No. She went from Diesel to Christopher Daniels, except for the punching herself in the back of the head, in the front of the head to bring more blood up. That's the last she was seen of, was dead in the back. And then she's not been back in 4 months.
So it's a strange dynamic. So let me try to think about this. She's been ghosted by AEW, according to the clip you talked about on your channel. She does this movie, which should put her back in at least the cross promotion stream of AEW wrestling in general, but it does not. So as the movie's about to come out, they don't even bring her back. The movie debuts, they don't bring her back. They promote the movie on AEW, but do not bring back a contracted AEW wrestler, nor the other two that we're talking about, three that are featured or were featured. But you bring these two out and you still have not explained it. Was she trying to defend this girl to getting good with Hollywood, or was she defending this girl, defending AEW as well? I think it's more towards Hollywood, trying to politic.
Yeah. Yeah, she's defending a friend and sort of, I guess, insulting wrestling fans at the same time. But I find her whole entrance into AEW and then this quick fall very fascinating because she's strong on her political opinions that are rather divisive, especially, I guess, to a lot of women in the locker room as well, which she put out there. And then 2 weeks later, she's quit Mercedes Moné and then she's written off TV. And then also, just before that, she had a couple of stinkeroos of matches on Dynamite as well. So I'm just sort of thinking, I don't know if it's a personality clash or what, but just some or all of those things, I'm guessing, Tony Khan or Mercedes Moné or whoever else looked at that and went, forget it, move on.
Let me ask you this. I've been in many different locker rooms. It seems like even if there is stuff like this and little blow ups or people not getting along or anything like that, that it still operates pretty much on the basis that everybody's there to make money and make a living. And it might be whatever. I'll just avoid you till I can't avoid you. Then we'll do something and we'll just get in and out and hopefully nobody gets hurt. Why is it in AEW they can never do that? This is not the first example. This is not the third example. This is not the sixth example. This is probably more than the 10th example. And the most notably being Punk. Like, it's almost like whoever comes in there that's outside, they are trying to destroy any positive direction that they could take the company in and basically protecting their spot, as I talked about earlier. Like, why is the Young Bucks and these other people protecting their spot when they're as in good as anybody else? Like the Punk stuff. What is it about AEW that makes it was supposed to start out unlike wrestling in any way possible. The carny aspect, no, not taking care of the talent, not equal pay in wrestling. They were supposed to do away with all this and a lot more tired old tropes. But it seems like AEW encapsulates carny pro wrestling more than any other company has.
How damaging, I mean, it's not damaging at all in a sense, but I mean, how damaging is someone just going out there and saying whether they meant it or not? You know that all these guys know who are going to win before they actually get out here, right? Is it damaging at all? Or is it just the kind of thing where it just makes people feel a bit silly or just groan? Is it a big deal at all in 2025 during a show to say that?
If this was something that stood alone, it would probably create whatever, as far as, like you said, bad feelings, something with shock with the fans. The even worse part that I'm going to lay out right now, why it's not shocking and why that's even worse for AEW, because at this point, oh no, another week AEW did something stupid. Another week we got the every week something seems to happen with AEW that devalues and lowers and causes people to not take them seriously. So the lack of reaction or the expected, here we go again. That's even worse than, my God, how did AEW let this person talk on the microphone where they usually say, well, there's another person talking on the microphone. Oh, there's a person refusing to back off a chair shot. Two people, as a matter of fact. Oh, there's a girl just pulling the chair, and the girl with the chair is not doing anything. That was literally last week or the week before. Now we got this. It's always something. If you're a worker and you were in WWE, TNA, the Indies, whatever it might be, and Tony Khan approaches you, he's going to pay you a ton of money. It's going to be a 5-year deal, whatever it's going to be. You're going to be there for a length of time. And you see this pattern repeat itself over and over again, usually with people that have an understanding of the way it should work to draw money instead of just spot fest, this, that, the other thing, the action figures wrestling the ring and Tony's playing with them, whatever metaphor you want to use. Would you pause and would you initially refuse whatever money it is to go to that company because you already know what's going to happen?
Depends on what part of my career I'm in. If I'm in the latter stages and I just want an easy ride and a paycheck, then yeah, absolutely.
But it doesn't seem like an easy ride. Like Edge came in and had that thing with Ricky Starks, and it looked like he was flustered. It just seems like whoever goes there they do not protect them as workers, and people look at them and go, man, they've become worse since they went to AEW. You get devalued by going there.
Cage match comparisons. There were two big cage matches over this past week. AEW Revolution, Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher, sort of the culmination of that feud, I guess, that's been raging on for months. And then WWE Raw on Netflix followed that on Monday, the next day. CM Punk versus Seth Rollins, which was also meant to be sort of the culmination of their feud, but I sort of guessed that it absolutely isn't going to be the culmination of their feud. It's sort of pivoting to other things as well. So on the Patreon, that will be out on Monday as we record this, we watched together Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. I don't know which of the two matches you want to talk about more or first, or if you want to start comparing them side by side completely. But what do you think, I guess, both matches, your takeaways from both were?
Well, there's overbooked elements on both of these matches. Now, during the Kyle Fletcher Will Ospreay match, which you and I watched for the first time and kind of reacted to it, these guys worked hard, and I got to always start with that. They worked hard. Punk and Rollins worked hard. Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher worked much harder. They were doing a lot of physical stuff, and there was a lot of elements in that match with the formatting of it that was wrong. In other words, when Mark Davis came out, not owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, a different Mark Davis, came out, it should have been off a double down and not a kick out, because the kick out is automatically kind of a disconnect and a transition into the next spot or portion of the match in the ring or in the cage. The Mark Davis or any interference usually happens when both guys are down at a disadvantage or the ref is down and gets knocked out and he comes in. None of that happened, and it was just a kick out, and he came out very randomly. The other part about the Kyle Fletcher Ospreay cage match was there's such a personal issue here. And I like that Kyle Fletcher was cursing at Will before he delivered that reverse running elbow into him. That was good. But just in overbooked fashion with a lot of these matches, he picks him up and hits him with the Tiger Driver. In other words, I think this is more vicious, like I just knocked you out, but then I pick you up to put you back down and then pin you. And then I check on you. So it was just kind of weird that way. They did a lot of amazing stuff that I wouldn't even have ever dared to do. You and I, when we watched it as well, and you can speak more on this, this is the part that I don't like as somebody that watches a cage match without knowing the backstory. I'd ask you, like, okay, they were friends, but did they team up here in AEW? Did they win the tag belts? Did they have a run? And then Kyle got jealous of Will, and then it caused a rift and whatever. You know, the classic, they're tag champs, but the one starts to get jealous. He doesn't do the hot tag. They lose the tag belts. Now we're off to the races with the personal issue. You had to sit there and kind of explain it to me, but we're still watching it. So you're giving me little pieces. I'm like, okay, but you haven't told me anything that made these guys hate each other this much to cause each other to bleed and use barbed wire and these things. That's the impression I got. So they're working so hard, but they haven't planted a seed to a casual fan to say, we're bringing you up to speed on this, even during the match.
I mean, probably there may well have been a package beforehand. We just sort of launched straight into the match. So, and also we weren't listening to the commentary as well.
I listened to the commentary. Vince was yelling in my ear when I did commentary, so I can listen to both. They covered it, but the presentation of the commentary, and I'm not, like I said, they worked their asses off. I enjoyed the cage match mostly because I wasn't in it. I didn't feel a thing, but the commentary still comes across as, you should already know this. We're going to kind of give you a little bit of a reminder, but you should all know. Or, you know, it's no secret that yes, it is actually kind of a secret because I don't know. Jim Ross was always great at bringing you up to speed in certain, like, downtime, double downs, this and that. In case you didn't know, like 6 months ago, these guys were tag champs, and then Kyle Fletcher alligator armed on a tag and cost them the tag titles. And that's how this all started. You see what I mean?
Sticking on the Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher match, was it you or I who said, man, this is more WWE than WWE? Because the pacing was very slow at the beginning, and we like that.
Yeah, we both said it. I said it first. You said you were just about to say that, and we're completing each other's sentences
Or
now.
just copying it, yeah.
No, but it was an enjoyable, digestible. Even when they started overbooking in the finish, they had their internal clock. They had their gears in a way, and that was it. Now, Will, big fan of Will, definitely a big fan of the fact that he paid off his dad's house and his mom's kitchen. That warms my heart. Will has a thing, and I wish I could talk to him, that he does not selectively fire up and show that fighting spirit. He doesn't save that. He did that a good 3 or 4 times, right? Maybe more. That diminishes and dilutes. Now, I said he should have stayed down, sold. He's bloody. He's trying to come back. He's trying to do stuff until he finally keeps Kyle down for that finish. Now he looks around, he fires up, and he's ready to, with the elbow, and Kyle's giving him the middle finger, F you, I hate you. Boom. 1, 2, 3. That's the way I see that. Will overbooks his character during a match as well. And he can do so much more by doing so much less.
Now, there was and there wasn't, comparing the two cage matches. So towards the end, which this ends up leading to the finish, the Hidden Blade, and then the Tiger Drive in 91, there's a Spanish fly off the top of the cage. And that cage is, 12, 13 feet from the ring canvas. Very, very, death-defying high-risk move that does eventually, with a couple more moves, lead to the win. But CM Punk and Seth Rollins, there's a superplex off the top of the cage, which the fans, if you really, really watched it, it wasn't off the top of the cage at all. It sort of starts at the top of the cage, and then sort of drags down just to the top rope. So it's actually only really a superplex off the top rope. But but for whatever reason, just the visual seemed like it was off the top of the cage or near enough that the crowd just absolutely exploded. And I thought that was really a masterclass of almost fooling the audience into thinking that you're doing something more high risk than you are actually doing.
Yeah, great point and great observation on that. For some reason, the Punk Rollins match had more of a big fight feel, even though that was a TV show on Raw. Revolution was a pay-per-view, correct?
Absolutely.
I don't know what it was. I love the fact Kyle and Will were standing on top of the cage, which some people could argue, well, you're starting out standing on top of the cage. You've already given away what it looks like you just said here. It was at the kind of at the peak of the match. They got up on the top of the cage. I like that they faced off down on the top turnbuckle, down to the ring, and then they started. I love those levels of coming down and the visual of them facing off on top of the cage from corner to corner. That was awesome. And the shot they got from whatever camera that's way high, AEW did a good job shooting the match. They didn't miss anything. I got to put that point in there. But something about the way WWE does these matches, even the cage is more visual. Even if you're looking from the outside, you can see what's going on. I know they used to cut the hole in the cage with the handheld as well. I don't know if they still do that, but
AEW does that. I spotted the couple
like
of
that.
camera holes
I like
for the
that.
cage,
It's a good way to not scratch the floor.
Did you ever see the TNA one? Did you ever see the TNA hole they cut in the cage?
No.
It was like a dog door, right, that Jeff Hardy could crawl through. There was actually a bit where Jeff Hardy like stuck his head through, but his arms as well.
Oh my God.
Like you could almost limbo through it. It was huge.
I remember that. There's a lot of TNA I try to forget. But with this match, I mean, which is better? I would have to say the Will Ospreay Kyle Fletcher match. You said they're still going to do stuff after this cage match, right? This is not the climax, the payoff match. They're actually going to keep working together.
For Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, I suggest that's the blow off.
I hope so.
Because how do you top it without just shooting somebody?
Well, don't give them any ideas. Remember, Dreamer wanted to get shot in the ring, and he's still actively wrestling, so we might see that. Something about WWE, okay, for a payoff, for a climax, for the blow-off match. Cage is it's easy. It's an easy thing. Cage, it's over. WWE has done something very creative where the cage is a transition going into the WrestleMania run, going into the WrestleMania angle, going into a brand new angle, which I'm still amazed. They're still not sure of certain matches of WrestleMania. It's not set in stone, it blows my mind that they don't know, like Roman Reigns is going to wrestle this guy or he's not even figured in. Think about that, James. He's more figured in now, but we still don't know what Roman Reigns is doing. We don't know what Punk is doing. We don't know what Rollins is doing. We assume it's going to be a three-way match, but we already got, what, 2 of them? Now 3 of them?
Yeah, the women's, is it Rhea, Io Sky, and who was it? The third one?
Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair.
There we go. Let's go back to the WWE cage match then, because we were talking about how they started off, and you were saying Will and Kyle actually started off they slowed the pace quite quickly, and it was a rather methodical match for what I was expecting, quite frankly. The CM Punk and Seth Rollins brawl, right at the start, just bang, straight into it, and I loved that as a start, and then you can slow it up afterwards. And I want to bring up, I think this was voted the worst match of last year by pretty much everyone who saw it. It was Jimmy Uso versus Jey Uso. I think that was last year. Yeah, WrestleMania. And I said that was the worst match. I watched it. It was just dead because they had this feud for months and then they just locked up, just did their thing and, just sort of like walk through like a regular match and there's like no intensity. And I think for most matches, even a grudge match these days, the intensity is lacking, where both of these matches were not lacking in intensity.
Well, there's something to be said. This is the trick, and you got to think about your storyline. Now, Jimmy and Jay had never worked before, never had a match on TV or anywhere, and they automatically did it at WrestleMania, so they have to start it over, like the feeling out process and all that stuff. That's what makes it like, okay, well, you guys are kind of in a blood feud because you're blood and you're fighting. It's a tricky spot. In theory, what they did should have been a really good, solid match. Just your first matches of WrestleMania, but you're also wrestling it like it's a first match on TV. Very strange. Now, these matches here, it's weird because the AEW cage match had a lot of characteristics of a WWE cage match. The WWE cage match had a lot of characteristics of an AEW cage match. Now Kyle and Will did start off with this, with the punches, so they did start off hot.
Yeah, the Fry Takayama, which is ever since that match has come out. Sorry, that was
a fight. That wasn't
was
a
that
match.
Pride? Yeah.
That was that
it was a
K1
fight,
or Pride? K1 or Pride?
I think K1's kickboxing, so it would have been Pride, I guess.
think. So, hey, they do that, but what you have to think about too in these, you still have to, what I would say is that the cage, especially in WWE, the escape through the door, the escape through the top, there was no heel in this match, by the way. So now you have 3 baby faces out there at the end of Raw. So as a heel, you're always trying to go right for the door and then drive back in, and the babyface holds you, and you're trying to escape. You can't do that with this. Now, Kyle Fletcher, there wasn't an escape thing on the AEW one, so it kind of limits him being a heel trying to win a cage match. That's the difference too. And some people say they hate the escape element, especially with this finish with Punk and Rollins. I loved it. I loved the way it was done because it was so inadvertent, but that it was overbooked at the end.
Before we get to the finishes and stuff, I see you've got the pen in your hand. There are some specific moves that we're going to watch and that you're going to analyze that you want to go into.
You know what? I really can't think of anything. I think both cage matches had a lot more good than bad. There's just tweaking and there's stuff you have to take out of the box or out of out of the cage in this instance, as far as your normal theories and how they go. Like I said, if Kyle and Will were the payoff match, easy enough. What WWE did with Punk, Rollins, and Roman was they literally used the cage as a transition and gloss over to further the angle. It's very, very strange, but they pulled it off. So Punk and Rollins have great chemistry, but a lot of this stuff now, you have me disbelieving that it's a true blood feud because they're obviously taking care of each other. It's a really strange spot. Do you agree?
What do you think of the finishes of both? So it's a criticism that is leveled on just wrestling in general in the last, well, goodness knows how many years now. There was an awful lot of finishes, awful lot of moves that could have led quite agreeably to a pinfall that would then kicked out of. So it's completely different between WWE and AEW's different versions of what they did. But sticking with AEW first, I'm trying to think. There was screwdriver stabbings to the head, stormbreakers, a Styles clash into thumbtacks, and some more stuff as well, and that was all kicked out of.
Yeah, I mean, when you get that far, and I know they're thinking, we've done everything, we wrestled, and that's the other thing, there's a false positive. These guys have wrestled all over the world, they wrestled each other, they came up together, I don't know how long they've been friends, they might have trained together in wrestling at the wrestling school. You don't have the proper gauge of how long a fan has thought you guys have worked. In other words, they assumed everybody was already caught up to speed to chapter 8 in their story because they lived through chapter 1 through 7 in their life. That's where wrestlers have to remove themselves and go, okay, if someone's tuning in to AEW for the first time or just started watching us 6 months ago, what do we need to do to make them not feel left out of the storyline? Now we have something. Now with the cage, now you have all this front-loaded storyline. You don't need screwdrivers, thumbtacks. You have to be very selective because guess what happens? Like you said, what are you going to do now? Shoot somebody in the next cage match? What's going to happen next time Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay wrestle each other? If they wrestle a regular wrestling match, you thought this was slow. What are you going to think about that? Unless they do the thing. They might do the thing.
That was another thing that I don't know who mentioned it, but it was nice to see that Will and Kyle didn't do the thing. And for people who don't know what the thing is what Ricochet and Will Ospreay do at the beginning of every match, sort of a 2-minute sequence that's meticulously planned out, and then at the end of it they go.
It's the most choreographed.
Face off.
It's the most choreographed spot in modern wrestling, in maybe all of history of wrestling. And they see it, and then that whole thing with the thing. And I would say to both guys, you're doing yourself a disservice because now you started out at a top gear. Now you brought it and slowed it down to no gear. Now you got to work way back to get to that. It's kind of like starting to heat all over again.
For the WWE CM Punk Seth Rollins cage match, in the lead up to the finish, so we'll talk about the finish in a minute. But what did you think of, once again, all the finisher kickouts? Because, as you said before, AEW was doing a more WWE presentation, at least in the first half, and then WWE were doing a more AEW presentation maybe towards the second half or entirely.
Well, Punk and Rollins know how to work, and they know what to do. But I'm assuming the way they did this up until the finish, which adds another element into it. So let's say this. Their one-on-one matches are done as far as this was the payoff match to them fighting one-on-one. So maybe that's why they went with more kickouts, more WrestleMania style. That's the other thing. You have everybody kicking out this much before WrestleMania, where everybody's been known historically, that's the time to prostitute your finish. Now they do it to a point where WrestleMania, just give me one finish and a pin and I'll be shocked. So they're doing themselves a little bit of a disservice, but I think they assume the one-on-one between Punk and Rollins, this is the payoff. And now Roman Reigns is going to have singles with Rollins, single with Punk, and probably that three-way of WrestleMania. That's what we're looking forward to in the next few weeks and months.
They actually did this a few weeks ago on, was it the first Raw on Netflix?
Yeah.
Or a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember.
Raw and Punk went over. So this is a good thing that they both had one win apiece, too.
No, I don't think they did they? Because
now they
Seth has never pinned.
But still, he won the cage match. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But the story going in it was that Seth really wanted to pin Punk. And I think Punk is 2 over on Seth recently because obviously Punk eliminated Seth in the Elimination Chamber, but then Seth got his revenge, and then now Seth. So you said beforehand that you thought the ending of the Punk and Seth Rollins cage match was overbooked.
I do, and here we're going to bring it up right here for everybody to see. This was done to perfection, and this is where I love these kinds of finishes where Rollins planted the seed, maybe knowing or not knowing, maybe it's a serendipity saying, I would love to pin CM Punk in this cage match. But what we get is something completely different, leaving Rollins still frustrated and now bringing another person in literally out of nowhere. You know, Russo said that he knew Reigns was going to be there. I didn't. So when I saw that, I was like, he was gone long enough to where you kind of forgot about him. So it was pretty cool. But here's the actual finish right here. Rollins giving Punk a really mean look, like I think he's going to finish him off or do something. And here we go, right here. Tight to him right there. And it's just, the way they did this was just amazing. Talking whatever crap he's talking to him right there. So Punk is right here. So I guess Punk is trying to get to Rollins, and Rollins sitting in the corner. And then out of nowhere, you're basically, I think this was the shot where you just see somebody reach in, dude. And he wins the match. That right there, James, I've never seen it done like that. So basically, Reigns came out of nowhere. Rollins planted the seed. I really want to pin Punk. He's talking crap to Punk. Punk is in his crosshairs. They're both selling. Double down scenario, by the way. It's technically a double down, like I talked about AEW. That's why the Mark Davis guy needed, that's when the focus is on him because everybody's down and they're laying out. The focus right now with Punk selling is right here, the eye contact between Reigns and Rollins. That's awesome. That tells a whole story right there. Now, what we get into right here, should have put up Triple H and Lee Fittings or whatever as producers and faded to black. You have a cliffhanger. But they didn't do that. This is the beginning of the end of the segment, of the good ending, in my opinion, where they overbooked it. Because now what's going to happen is basically he's going to get up and take a Superman punch. Now, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong if that's where we got to leave somebody somewhere. So this should have been, if it wasn't just what the hell is going on, we got to go, we're out of time, we got to figure this out, we'll get some answers by next week. He took the Superman punch. It kind of answered a question that I didn't even get a chance to ask. Whose side is he on? What is he doing? Do you agree? It should have been left with just, what are you doing? And just a stare down.
Yeah, I guess. It did end with another mystery, though, of one, how did Paul Heyman move so quickly to get to the ring and we didn't notice? But also why he was cradling CM Punk and why was Roman Reigns looking at him like that. It did end on a lot of mysteries, if nothing else, but I see what you mean. They could have dragged this out another week.
They could have dragged it out multiple weeks. All these questions, there's multiple questions that could have been answered. And the least of which, the least interesting of it all is Paulie. I'm sorry. It's not interesting. I have more interest to see, well, why did he pull Rollins out to have him win when Punk has Paulie owing him a favor, right? Reigns owes CM Punk a favor. We could have left with that. No physicality outside of that. And Punk looking through the cage, like, what the hell are you doing? Hey, here's the thing. Superman punch lays Rollins out. Punk leans through the cage door and says, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? You cost me the match. Slam the door. They're both out. Like Rollins, even though that's a great face, is knocked out. Punk's knocked out, and Reigns is just standing there. We go off the air. But we got so much more physicality than was necessary. So right here, Punk is getting up. Rollins, I'm sorry. Rollins is mad at me. It's Rollins. And takes a spear. Okay, now we got him pulling him out, Superman punch, and the spear. Are we going home? Are we fading to black? No, we're not. It's going to be even more. Right here. Right here, slow-mo it. Oh, right there. Dude, that could literally just split his shin, hyperextend his knee. He was throwing him into the barrier in this direction. But that's an alley. That's a big alley right there. That boom. And then he hit anyway, but I'm telling you, he's feeling his shin right now. But what I'm saying is, what if Rollins off that little thing where his shin hit the steps gave him such a nagging injury that he's out of WrestleMania? I'm just saying, what if? Based on unnecessary physicality, which, by the way, there's even more. All right, so here he goes. He has him against the other steps. I don't know what he does here. You see, they stop him.
No, they stop him. They stop him, yeah.
Yep. Okay. We're already at a point now. We're in pull-apart territory. So what's going on? We haven't faded to black at all. Now, that's what made Reigns mad, right? Paulie holding Punk. And Paul is now consoling CM Punk. So Rollins has had his ass literally handed to him. But now let's forget about all that extra physicality, all that heat from a babyface to another babyface. And now Reigns is jealous that Paulie is holding and consoling Punk. He steps into the ring, picks up a gear, and starts bouncing Punk off the cage. That was done very well. Into a spear. Okay, but what am I watching? Why is he doing all this? And why couldn't he do this kind of physicality next week after answering at least one of the questions of why he pulled Rollins out? Now he's standing over him. So great visual, great way to end the show. Executive producers getting their extra money and doing that. So what I'm saying is, why You lumped in weeks and weeks and weeks of physicality to answer each question as the weeks go on to WrestleMania. All in, and they were all spaced out very, dude, it was uncomfortable to watch how much he was beating up Rollins. Reigns is a babyface. Rollins is a babyface. What did he do to you to make you that angry?
Well, I mean, there's the mystery, but could have been told over 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
Here's the way you lay it out. He pulls him out. He stares, Rollins stares, Punk stares, like, what's going on? We fade to black. Well, of course, you got to do the executive producer so they get their money. So you fade to black. Next week comes out, and Rollins wants to talk to Reigns because he wanted to pin Punk, and he didn't want to win that way. Reigns comes out and goes, "You're an ungrateful bastard. I helped you. Don't you care? Where's Seth Rollins didn't care how he won? I've changed, blah, 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 whatever." And he's like, "You've disrespected the tribal chief. You're going to pay a heavy price by the end of the night." Then that physicality is explained. Punk can come out and go, "I hate this guy, but what are you doing? I hate this guy. Oh, you want to get in my way? Stay out of my way, Punk, or you're going to find out next week what's going to happen to you." Does it to Punk. Now it's like, Reigns is like, "I need an opponent for WrestleMania." Punk, you're wrapped up, taped up, whatever. "I'm going to accept your thing." Rollins comes in. "I'm accepting his challenge too." Now we have a three-way. And that could literally be the week before WrestleMania. So that's the way I see it. Was it a good segment? Was it a good ending? Was it a good cage match? Was it a good finish? Yes. But it could have been great. And it left a lot to be desired from the explanation or anticipation front as a fan.
I never asked you this, but which of the two cage matches, when you account for forget about the lead up, but the matches themselves and then the post match, which did you think was better overall?
Well, you're going to get me in trouble again. The WWE one. I don't know why. I can't explain why. And it's not lifelong WWE fan or any of that stuff. I always preferred UWF, NWA, the gritty style of wrestling. You know, that's why ECW, it like spoke to me so much too when I was there. But for some reason, even with the mistakes that were made in this, they still move forward. In other words, Kyle and Will threw everything you could at the kitchen sink, including the kitchen sink probably next match, but it didn't stand out any more than any other cage match where they brought everything out. Like every cage match in AEW is a hardcore CZW kind of blood fest. I can't even say the promotion, but you know which one I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So I preferred that. And the thing is, I feel bad for Kyle and Will, the talent, because they didn't maximize the moments and the memories to stand out over years, where 5 years from now, somebody's standing in front of Kyle Fletcher at an autograph session or a convention going, "Oh my God, I remember that moment when you got Spanish flied off the top of the cage, or when you got Styles clashed into the thumbtacks." No, you can't, because there's 36 other just as devastating moments that happen, which make them all forgettable in a way.
Right then. So we're going to move on. This is going to be the final segment.
By the way, Will did pay his bills with that match, so I'm a big believer. Will pays his bills. Will pays his bills.
I think we'll shut down the show now. I think we're already at like 2.5 hours anyway. So for goodness sake, you get your money's worth, even though it's free. And if you do want to pay us some money and you want some more of the Stevie Richards show, then you can sign on to the Stevie Richards Patreon. I know Stevie will talk about that in a second, but beforehand, we're out every single Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And depending on daylight savings time, that depends what time it is in the UK, but it's usually 7 p.m. UK. What else do I do? Oh, yeah, we'll do the rest of the plugs. Yes, the James Romero YouTube channel, I'll post there a couple of times a week about the various news and my opinions of it, should you care about those. And then there's also Storytime with Dutch, WSI, whatever else I've got going on, I forget. And, of course, Stevie has the Cameo, the fitness channel, and most importantly, the Patreon.
Yes, another thing I'm looking to really revive that dormant channel, which was the former wrestling analysis channel. And I had some calls this week with B&H Photos. So Besides the affiliate links in every description of every episode and clip, I will be adding the gear we use at the Stevie Richards Show and I use at Stevie Richards Fitness. So if you're interested in that, those are also affiliate links that help support the content and my GAS. Not the gas you're thinking of, the gas that most of the boys use. Gear Acquisition Syndrome. Totally different one. So, but we do have patreon.com/Stevie Richards. The watch-alongs have become immensely popular each and every Monday. I enjoy doing them with James, and people seem to enjoy watching them. The best part I like, after they go up, the interaction between the community there on Patreon. They talk to each other, debate each other, talk about their favorite moments. They're very involved with each other, and it's a pretty awesome, spirited but not negative kind of debate community. So everybody's really, really kind and respectful to each other, and I do appreciate that, and I appreciate all the support. Also here on YouTube, we just surpassed 94,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. We're heading to 100. I'm sure James is going to bring the clock up. Maybe we'll do a live stream as we hit that 100,000, James. Lots of people like to do that when they're at like 99.
Oh, do they?
They do a thing where there's a counter, like a roll counter, like an odometer that goes up to that, and we can celebrate 100,000.
Is it like the Dick Clark ball
Yes,
drop
it is.
kind of thing, I guess?
It's a puberty drop. That's what it is. So, patreon.com/Stevie Richards, Stevie Richards Show, Stevie Richards Fitness, James Romero, Story Time with Dutch Mantel, and WSI. Thank you very much for watching episode 37. See you next week for episode 38.